We've got a packed meeting today. I did send out a note before to say we'll be, to the greatest extent possible, taking everything as read today to give maximum time for questions and discussion. So let's crack on. Just the boilerplate in terms of this being a recorded meeting, so public meeting is being recorded. And in an earthquake, drop, cover and hold. The shaking is long and strong. We all follow the tallest person out the door. As usually, Jareth's not here. Okay, so we could normally be following Jareth out there. Head up towards Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. If an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area on the grass outside. Emergency exits are clearly signposted. It's currently designated as a public place, no patches, thank you. 1 metre physical distancing. Toilets located down the hall on the left. Okay, so do we have any notices? No notices, apologies. I have Councillor Hokianga for lateness and he's going to dip in and out online. Any other apologies?
From Peter Eden.
Peter, thank you.
Councillor Roadley's on her way, just caught in another hui, but won't be long, she's coming in online.
Thank you. Have we heard from Councillor Van Bake? No, we'll notice as an apology for the moment anyway. I imagine we'll see him shortly. Could I have a mover for the apologies? Thank you. Councillor Ormsby and a seconder. I think Councillor Sears, I saw your hand go up. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Conflicts of interest. Do we have any conflicts today? So I'm going to register a conflict in terms of item 6, compliance monitoring enforcement, because of my consents. Not sure whether that's required, but it's. I don't want to speculate on my compliance, so I'll let others judge. If there are no other conflicts. Right, we can move on to the, we don't need to move in second conflicts, do we? No. So we just move on to the minutes for the 24th of August. If there are no concerns with the minutes, then do I have a mover for accepting for the minutes? Thank you. Thank you, Jock. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Williams. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Can you guys go to the washroom for long, please?
Oh, yeah.
Is that you, Di?
It might be too late.
Di?
I think she's saying that she can't hear.
She can't hear? We do have public forum, but I don't think we have any public in the forum. Certainly we haven't had anyone express an interest to speak, so I think we're trialling that till the end of the year, and I think rather than seeing that peter out for lack of interest, we might want to think about promoting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, think about promoting it. So we can move on to decision items. And the first one of the day is the carry forwards, 23-24 carry forwards. Susie, are you going to?
Yeah, can I just introduce, and Chris Comer and Amy Allen are coming up, and I guess this paper comes every year for approval through to the council to carry forward unspent budgets, just to allow the teams to continue to execute on some of those core priority pieces of work. We have tried really hard this year to avoid unnecessary carry forwards where realistically we are pretty don't have capacity to actually do the work, or in this case this year where we've had a general reserve deficit, there are no more funds. And so in some instances we have literally not carried forward any of those OPEX. But I will hand over to Chris and Amy just to take you through some of those specifics. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Susie. Yeah, as Susie mentioned, this is an annual paper that comes forward to allow approved expenditure budgets that have happened in the previous year through the annual planning process to be carried forward to be spent in the next year. even though they may be coming from external funds that we will receive in the future year, we need to do this paper to carry forward the approval of the budget so that we're actually spending against an approved budget, even though we've got the external funding to do that. So it's a necessary thing for councils to do there. As Susie mentioned, our general funding position for last financial year is that we did not have a surplus of general funds, mainly because of the investment income shortfalls in there, and therefore in the work that has been done with operational managers and then discussion with ELT, none of those items that were general fund related will be carried forward, are being proposed to be carried forward, and there's a list of them in the paper. Managers will be looking to reprioritise existing year spend or new year spending, 24-25 spending, to be able to deliver the finalisation of those projects in there. The other carry forwards are mainly around external funding coming in or loans that we have already got included in our future budgets and our 3-year plan. The only exception to that is stuff around the Land for Life and one other, which is funded out of the long-term investment fund. There. There's a detail of all of those throughout the paper, and we'll open up for any questions that may have.
Thank you, Chris. Yep, 2 questions. Councillor Sears.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just think it might be useful for you to explain again the long-term fund that you just described. You said Land for Life was funded out of the... Just
Okay.
not to be confused with investments or other things, just to get clear again on the funding of the long-term fund.
The Land for Life program was originally set to be funded from drawing down money from the long-term investment fund. And so that's where the carry forward. So to actually spend that money, we would need to liquidate some of the assets of the long-term investment fund. The question around there is whether it's liquidating gains that have been made in the fund over and above the capital protected amount. If we were in a case where we had quite a bit of space above the capital protected amount, that would be quite easy to be doing, and that's what the fund was set up to do. The difficulty is that we're getting back up towards having the capital protected fund amount covered in there, but not quite. And so that really needs to be a decision as to whether we would draw down below that capital protected amount.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Kitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you just help me understand what general fund is?
So general fund is the funds that are received from general rates. So the general rate component of our rates that go out, they are supplemented by investment income that comes in. So for example, a lot of our activities, it's about $35–40 million worth of our activities are funded by the general rate, by general funds.
Well, can I take you, Chris, to paragraph 9. I'm just struggling to understand this. The requirement, the 2.352 mil you've described as a general fund, looks to me like expenditure across all the activities funded by general target fees, etc. So how do you arrive at a number under general fund that is specific to general rate?
Because what we've done is we've taken all of the expenditure for all of the activity that we've done during the year. We've then put against that all the different methods of funding for that, mainly targeted rates, external funds coming in, and the normal amount of general funds that would go against that. What that then leaves us, because our investment income was quite short during the year, we have a shortfall in the amount of general funds that we can allocate out there. So that leaves us with a shortfall of 2.3 million. So we haven't collected enough general funds through the general rate or investment income to cover all of the expenditure. Now, the investment income is about $7 million short in there. However, we have had underspends in a number of activity areas that are general rate funded, which partly offsets that shortfall of the investment income, but doesn't fully offset it. So we're left with a gap of $2.3 million. So to be able to fund,
Yeah,
to break even, we would have had to.
I get that. I'm just trying to reconcile, if you've got a shortfall on, say, the targeted rate or fees and charges, how that then translates into a general rate shortfall.
So if something is fully funded by a targeted rate, that shortfall or surplus on that will just go against that targeted rate reserve in there. If something is partially funded by a targeted rate, so for example, our flood resilience schemes where they're 70% targeted rate and 30% general, if we overspend on that, we would take 70% of that overspend out of the targeted rate reserve.
Sure.
And 30% would go to the general fund.
So we're making an assumption that if, say, using that example, 70-30 targeted versus general rate, that any deficit or shortfall is all applying to the general rate component as opposed to the 70%. So is there a shortfall on the target or is there a shortfall on the general?
In that example, if the overspend was in there, 70% of the overspend would be applied against the targeted rate and 30% of the overspend would be applied against a general fund. So therefore, if there was a reserve already sitting there, we would utilise more of that targeted rate reserve than we wanted to, than we planned to.
So the reserve would cover off the 70%,
Yeah.
and we're left with a deficit on the 30%.
Yes.
Which is resulting ultimately in the 2.35
Correct.
mil. Okay, thank you.
Right, just out of interest and for the sake of clarity, Chris, just, is it the case that all targeted rates go to a reserve? Okay, thank you. Is it the case for the carry forwards that are being proposed that there are positive reserves in all cases?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Chair, series of dumb questions, which I tend to want to ask at Corporate Strategic. Can I start with paragraph 9, and it says at the top, OPEX 000. And then I go down to other income, it says we had an actual, is that telling me we had an other income of 116 million?
Yes.
Yes.
That includes a lot of our grants and subsidies that we'd got through for the cyclone, silt and debris,
Right.
sediment and debris.
We were budgeted 198 million. And the shortfall was just a timing thing, presumably?
Yeah, it was a timing thing, but it was also the fact that when we did the annual plan for 23-24, the cyclone was fresh in the mind and we didn't really know how much was going to be. We put the entire amount into the 1 year, which actually, in terms of the budget, which covered some stuff that we spent before the 30th of June there and some that will be spent next year as well.
Yeah, in 3 years, all right. And policy and regulation, we've got actual 89 million in budget, so that included the silt and debris, does it?
Yes.
Yeah, because otherwise you wouldn't expect that to be at a level. Okay, so carrying that on, I was going to say carrying that line of question forward, but I won't. I'll, paragraph 71, I think it is. Probably I'm not going to find. Yeah. See, this is curious because, well, it's not curious, this is the first year I've noticed that we haven't carried forward. What has made our situation so different in terms of the availability of general funds from previous years?
I think everything that has happened over the last year in terms of the increases in costs, the more focus that we're having on our financial position and everything, the fact that the previous LTP had had quite a large increase in investment income that has not eventuated over there, that we've ended up with, you know, even with $5 million worth of underspends in some areas, still having a $2.3 million deficit on our general funds has made us be very clear that we don't have the general funds to actually carry forward into the next year. That would start to result in us having to borrow more money and put that burden onto ratepayers going into the future.
It's not a case that we have rated for certain activities through the general rate and then not done them, so that we've sort of squandered that money on something else. This is because we haven't got enough investment return income, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so did we not general rate for flood risk, SCADA project, West Shore, Ruataniwha model, environmental science or Kotahi?
Yes, we have general rate. We have general rated, remembering that a general rate is not sort of for the absolute specific.
It is one of the activities that we
It's one
charge
of
a
the
general rate
activities that's
for.
funded by general rate
Yes.
funding, which includes an element of investment income as well as general rates coming from the ratepayer.
Okay, so it does seem to me that we'd probably gone to the public saying we needed the general rate of X because we were going to do activities Y, and there is an element of activities Y that we're not now doing. That'd be fair?
Yeah, although if we go back to, in terms of the general rate position, which was in paragraph 10, what we're talking about is our original budget was we needed $41 million worth of general funding to fund all of the things we would say would fund from general rates. Of that, only 17 million was from the ratepayer. We had another 16 million, which is from our investment income, and another 7 million, which was from the loan funding from the previous LTP. So you could say
It was from a mix of sources that we were going
mix
to
of
do those
sources,
things.
and none of those sources are specifically allocated
Earmarked,
to.
right. Okay, now, so what do we lose if we don't do flood risk, flood forecasting, including flood monitoring room? We don't carry that forward. We've just had an independent review panel saying that we need to do all that stuff and we've got a priority on it, so is there a problem here?
So what specifically that's talking about is resetting up and establishing the emergency room upstairs.
Okay.
It's repositioning a room already in place and putting it somewhere else and
Right.
setting it up. So it's not that we don't have it. That was around re-establishing. We might look to do that.
Okay, so we're not losing the service or the
No,
activity, it's
no,
just the room that
100%
it's
agree.
accommodated in.
I think,
I
yes.
guess I could say the same with the SCADA project. What are we losing there?
So with the SCADA project, that's $59,000 that we're looking to carry forward, but 17 was the general funds piece. So
Yeah.
we're still carrying the targeted rate piece forward.
Okay.
And we would just have to top it up from reprioritised general
Yeah,
funds.
so that's
this
what
year.
we'll do, okay. That's pulling money out of the back of the couch for other things. Now, what about the 874,000 for Kotahi? Is that the fact that we paused the Kotahi plan and we're now doing an RPS? Is this,
So
that's
we,
quite a big
it
pot of
is a
money.
big number. So we had 1.5 million that we carried forward from 22-23 to use in 23-24, and that we got a lot of the way through that. This is to continue the work, but the total work program is not 100%, not nailed down yet. So we do have budget in the 24-25 year, and we're just going to have to watch that one and prioritise as best we can. Did you want to add anything else to that, Katrina?
Through you, Chair, we absolutely intend to continue on with the work. As you well know, the money that we have carried forward from the previous year to that one, and the money that was spent was engaging vision and value contracts. Those are well underway with the PSGEs. We are continuing. There will be a second phase to that. And the reality is that we will have to use it, the existing or the new budget to try and do all of that work within this financial year's allocation. So it'll be a tightly managed budget.
Are you feeling confident you can do what you need to do?
Through you, Chair, I think there is some risk, as there always is when we're developing plans, and a likelihood that we will go over budget. And so I'll need to work through that as we go, and I'll be keeping this council and the full council informed as we go through the year.
All right. So, thank you. That's answered all my questions. So it's not necessarily these things are lost altogether, but you are going to have to find 1.3 from somewhere else if you can, right? Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah, so I just observed that the paper notes in various places that essentially a commitment to continue on projects. I'm not sure that it's clear that all of those are continued. But I mean, this tension is just an inevitable part of us focusing on what is most important. And this is, in my mind, somewhat separate. This is a wash-up, if you like, of previous activity. And we're now moving in, well, we're now operating under the first year of the new plan. And we have committed to a pretty intensive exercise this year of reprioritising and savings. Not every program can carry on, so it's really up to the executive leadership team and the CEO or the acting. Sorry, is there an apology from me? Sorry, I probably should, because I believe, Susie, you're acting today, are you?
That's correct.
Well done, thank you. I should have noted that. Anyway, so it's up to the acting or the CE to deliver with the money that we give them.
Yeah, thank you. And look, the questions weren't loaded, it's simply understanding the implications of what we're being asked to decide, that's all.
Right, we are here to ask questions and get answers. Thank you. Councillor Kidd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although I'm just looking at the board and that my colleague, Councillor Rodley, got a question by the looks.
Yeah. Councillor Rodley?
Happy to wait for you, Councillor Curtin, but mine will be a quickie, hopefully. Good afternoon, everyone. Just possibly for you, Susie, the Land for Life, para 28 through 30, in 29 it mentions the divesting of assets to repay the reserve. What does that look like?
Councillor Rhodey, we just had a conversation maybe 5 minutes ago around what potentially that would mean, how we would fund that. What we don't want to get into is a position of actually selling managed funds to pay for expenses and use gains in those funds to pay in excess, or the approach at the moment with the investment fund, if you recall, is to any gains in those sit in an income equalisation fund, which essentially would fund, in part, critical activities such as this and or cover us in years when we didn't have enough investment income. So essentially that's what that's referring to. How would we fund that? Yeah. Did that?
So you're not actually planning to sell anything to keep Land for Life on the road. It's just if it needed to be re-topped up, you would. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rodley. I'll just go to Councillor Ormsby because she hasn't had a question.
Kia ora, Chair. Thanks, team, for your paper. Just two questions. The first one around coastal hazards. The recommendation is to carry forward that targeted rate funding. Am I right to assume that's for the consultation only? Consultation process going forward?
That's my assumption.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, thank you. And second question with sustainable homes on page 13. I'm assuming that does not include our support to Wairoa with setting up a process for insulation for the affected houses.
No, there shouldn't be any impact on that. That's committed, that is committed help and assistance to them. Primarily, the Sustainable Homes Carry Forward is literally processing all of those final applications that hit us prior to us deciding to close down that program. But Wairoa will not be impacted. That healthy home investment has already been committed to and paid across.
Thank you. That's my question. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just these questions are on behalf of the dazed and confused community. Looking at paragraph 70, there's a table there of unfunded commitments from 23-24 with a total of 1.328 mil. And then I'm trying to reconcile that with recommendation 2 in that table there. And I'm just confused by that. The numbers don't line up, and I'm assuming that there is more than that table to carry forward. then table 70 to carry forward to the recommendation.
Through
So well, if I choose, for example, policy and regulation, Kotahi, 874 carry forward.
Sorry, Councillor, I was going to stop you, but sorry, I'll bet you go. That's the not carry forward table.
paragraph 70
So
is the
paragraph
items that are
70
not.
is what we are not
We're
carrying
not
forward.
carrying that
No.
forward. Okay, that's why,
It's the general rate stuff that failed at the hurdle.
so that's not going through. Okay,
No.
I'm with you now. Thank you, well explained.
And some capex. Councillor Sears.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I do have some comments on regional parks, probably more for comments. I have some issues there, but I would like to know the MB funding, if this wasn't continued with, is that MB funding able to be held over for any more years? Do we understand the contract for that?
Do you know?
James?
Sorry, do we know?
Sorry, you'll need to come up to a microphone, otherwise I can't hear you online. No one wants to miss these words.
So this is, I take it, we're talking about the Waitangi Park and the MB share of that funding.
Yes.
So that needs to be continued. We've asked for an extension from last year for it to be continued over to this year. If we were to continue it further, we'd have to ask for another extension.
Go to Laura. Kia ora, Laura. Welcome.
All right, kia ora koutou. So thank you, Sophie, for Councillor Slice for bringing that up, because I want to speak to that point as well. Haui Historical Park, and thank you for bringing that up, Katrina, around the Kotahi PGC relationship. So Tamati Pokai Whenua have, thank you very much, have gone into MAU with HBRC. We just want to know, with this 50-50 partnership with involving 4 hapu, who are they and how do HBRC set these relationships up, and what's the obligation back to our PGCs and our settlement legislation? Because we were unaware of this particular collaborative effort.
So I believe that we're talking about Hawea Park. So there is a agreement that we have with essentially 4 marae and 3 hapu. And I can't remember off the top of my head the name of them, but we can certainly provide that information for you. It's a 50-50 agreement that we have with those hapu. There is a trust being formed. It's going through the Maori Land Court at the moment to work out how to form a governance entity that would essentially own the park, half share with HBRC and half share with the hapu group. There may be others around the table who know who the hapu group are.
Kia ora, Laura, just to help there, it's with Ngāti Hori and Ngāti Hāwea, so there's a representative from Kohupātaki, Matahiwi, Waipatu marae and Ruahapia. So those 4 marae are part of that co-governance agreement.
Okay, so how does that meet our legislative requirements with TPW? Because we weren't alerted to this.
I'm not sure when the
So
inception.
how do HBRC set up these relationships? That's what I'm asking, because this is going to be quite contentious moving forward.
Sorry, through the chair. This has been going on quite a while now. I believe that it was set up when Rex Graham was the chairperson, and that started that piece of work going forward. I think this is the first of its type, and we've been working with the hapu and marae groups to put together a management plan which has a deed of understanding about how that will work, and that's been going through the process with the Maori Land Court to set up a trust for that to work.
Yeah, so
So how does that work with the PGCs? That's my question.
thank you, James, for that answer. Look, I think, we might have an answer. But I think this is probably something we need to take offline.
Yeah, through Chair, Laura, happy to follow up. Outside of this, I will need to go back and pull some information together, but happy to bring it to Tamati Pokai Whenua to better understand that.
Yeah, can you do that? And would that impact recommendation 55 if that process is going to be held up? Because we need to seek some clarity around this, because we can't be having council setting up relationships without the knowledge of the PGC that holds the statutory relationships. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Laura. Laura, look, the point's well
Halfway,
made.
yeah.
Look, and it's up to, I think it's a good time to move on to see if we can pass the resolution. If councillors want to speak to that or have a view on that, then we can address it in that phase of things. So could I have a mover for the, we have a recommendation essentially to adopt all of those carry forwards as per the two tables. I'm not going to read them all. Do I have a mover for that recommendation, please? Don't all put your hand up at once. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Thank you, Jock. Right. Would you like to speak to that, Martin?
Oh, no, I mean, it's pretty self-evident why we're in the situation, or that we are in the situation that we currently face. We have typically been more, I think, generous with carry forwards. Now we need to be a bit more discerning, and I appreciate that. So I think, I'm reasonably supportive of where things have landed, and I just hope if, the policy and regulation finds itself in trouble, it does put up its hand and tell us, particularly if work is being or needs to be done, that can't be. Other than that, I think we're good to go.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh?
No, I don't have anything to add, Chair. It's been well traversed.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Sears?
Thank you, Chair. So back to the regional parks. I mean, this is really the only place that I have concerns or questions around the carry forward. We've been really clear in council and it's been clear in our community that you're expecting a very tight budget, and if there's any place we can do it, it is around building more toilets and in a park. There's $750,000 of loan funding that we could remove from the budget, and it looks like there may be a hold on Hawera Historic Park anyway, just after Laura's comment, so it may be wise to drop those two from the carry forwards.
Okay, could I have a management response to that, please, either James or our acting chief executive?
So the commitment for Waitangi Park toilet block has been in train now for a number of years. I am hesitant at this stage to suggest that that is removed whilst significant progress is being undertaken, certainly in that space with engagement already. My preference at this stage is to leave that in. We will work through with Laura and the team around just what engagement is needed, but there is commitment. There is a need in that space. It is heavily used, and I would, at this stage, suggest to leave that in.
Okay. Right,
It is a
carry on.
capital, it's a capital item.
Yep. Sorry, my question will come back to me. Councillor Ormsby.
I just want to support the mover and seconder for all the items, and it is raised around the regional park. And these are some long-standing relationships. So with the Waitangi Regional Park, it's a relationship with the Ātiarangi Trust, who built the Star Compass, and who we've worked alongside Forest and Bird with all the planting, monitoring, trapping. We know that the Waitangi Day celebrations are held there, Matariki celebrations are held there, and so this is this may actually deter the relationships built there and the work done together. So I'm really resistant to renege on some of those commitments, as well as the Hawea Regional Park. And I take Laura's apprehension, and I know one of your trustees on the PSGE, Ngahiwi Tomoana, has been instrumental in the partnership with HBRC in this. So I would front him at the board level to say, you know, bringing back information back to the board. But I think leaving it in Te Wairama's capable hands to have those discussions on how PSGEs need to be involved going forward. So, yeah, I am reluctant to pull away from those engagements and those commitments we've already made at these parks, which is why I continue to support the carry forwards proposed here.
Thank you, Councillor. Just before you go, Jock, just a question for Susie, if I may. Is it a practical option for us to separate out and have another crack at a particular carry forward? What does your timing look like, or what procedurally issues would we create if we separated out and left one parked for the moment?
I'll just have to refer to different timeline, sorry.
Yeah, there is effectively what we are doing here is carrying forward an approval of a budget that has previously been made by council to in the next financial year because it was not able to be spent in this financial year. So you would not be able to spend against that activity until the approval had been made. The other thing that I would suggest is that with the comments made, it's an approval of a budget, but if there is a proviso that there is a discussion that Te Wai is going to carry out beforehand, that can be part of, you know, that would need to happen before we actually spent any money, or could happen before we spent any money against that approved budget.
Thanks. Look, I've been reminded that we're into debate now rather than question time, so we've got a motion on the table. Are there any other speakers? Yeah, sorry, Jack. Yeah,
Just clarification, that the 700K that we have allocated to Waitangi Regional Park, that's 50% of the anticipated cost, of the balance coming from MB? Is that right?
Around that, sorry, I'm just trying to find the table of the regional park. So external funding is about 350K, yes, and 700 is the carry forward specific to Waitangi Park.
Okay, so the 350 in that case, that's at risk if we don't proceed with it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so further speakers? Councillor Sears, you've already had a crack. Does anyone else?
I was just going to reply.
You can come back and reply. Councillor Sears.
At the expense of labouring the point, this table has been really clear and strong on getting back to basics and cutting our cloth and showing our community where we can save money. And while I will support it, because I actually completely agree with Chair Ormsby's comments, the fact is this is the only place where we can pull back some budget. So I just am labouring it for the point at the next place where we get short again on money, every time we don't take the opportunity to cut and cut and cut, we end up in the same place. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me.
Councillor Williams didn't reply.
Paragraph 74.
Can you be more specific?
Debt funded expenditure, of which that 870 is which makes it up, does not have an impact on the rate paid because it's already, in other words, it will mean we haven't got a trim that we can make in next year's annual plan, but it won't exacerbate next year's annual plan.
So it will affect debt, not income. All right, look, there's a motion on the table. Put the motion. All those in favour? Hang on, sorry. Can we do that again, please? All those in favour? Someone paying attention? Councillor Curtin?
Oh, it's just my colleague disrupting me.
All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
I'll go against.
Oh, we got one against.
Make
Councillor
points.
Sears
Thank
in
you.
opposition. All those others were in favour. Thank you. That's passed.
You need to be careful sitting in the gallery with Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, team. Right, so moving on to our second decision item. Compliance Monitoring and Enforcement Report, annual. Thank you, Katrina.
Afternoon, councillors. So attached in a separate document is the Hawke's Bay Regional Council's Compliance Monitoring and Enforcement Report for 2023-2024. Sorry, before I continue, introducing Rob Hogan for those who have not met Rob. Rob is our compliance manager, and his group have put the report together. It comes to you a year late, obviously. It's the 23-24. It's the 22-23 compliance report. That's why Rob's sitting beside me to correct all the mistakes I make. And it has come to you late, obviously, squarely because of Cyclone Gabriel. Team were under capacity, over. The team had a lot of work on last year. Clearly needed more coffee this morning, and we didn't have capacity to get this report completed. So we have done that now. While I say that, they are currently working on the previous year, just gone, the 23-24 compliance report, and that should be with you early next year. We're expecting February, that report. The reason it takes a little bit longer is because we end with the year with all consent holders sending us their own annual compliance reports. Once we've received all of those, that we then compile ours, and so those are coming in now. I will take the report as read, and I'll take the paper as read, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Rob, for all the work that goes on and behind that. Questions? Councillor McIntosh.
I just under the executive summary of your report, I want to say great work on the volume of stuff you got through, albeit prior to the flooding issues and so on. But I can't, part of me wondered, so there's a tiny portion of non-compliance, 0.5%. Given the pressure we were under, cost-wise, staffing-wise and everything, actually are we being over-vigilant in the extent to which we monitor that? Are there other ways that we could look at to do that where we simply didn't monitor as much, or different ways of looking at how we monitor?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
I'm really saying, are we being over-vigilant on compliance for the effort that goes into that?
Through you, Chair, we have levels of service set out in our long-term plan that we're required to meet. And I don't believe we've met those entirely in this financial year in terms of the consents that we are required to meet. Given Cyclone Gabriel and the state that the region was in, we absolutely did step back from our normal level of compliance monitoring work that we would normally undertake.
Yes, look, I did note that, and I noted page, well, where it talks around low flow monitoring and the accommodation you gave to people around that time, which is great. It's exactly the sort of thing we should be doing. But just looking at the sort of a normal situation of 22-23, I'm saying that, I'll give an analogy. If you're a traffic cop, you could have police on every corner monitoring the speed, but we don't do that because that's too much and too hard to do. I'm just saying, are we putting too much effort and therefore cost into monitoring?
I don't believe that. There are consents that require monitoring. We rate those consents, all the consents held. We determine their level of risk to the environment and undertake monitoring on that basis. We certainly don't physically monitor 100% of our consents, but we are required under our LOSMs to monitor 100% of our highest risk consents. Most years we don't achieve that. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what else to add in that regard.
Okay, sorry, look, just one more point. Have I got that right? In the 22-23 year, we,
Sorry, which page are you on, councillor?
the executive summary,
Yep.
on the 22-23 year, we monitored 2,434 consents out of a total of 3,825. Have I got that right?
Correct.
Okay, that's point made.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh. Councillor Sears, question.
Kia ora, thank you. Through you, Chair, very quick question. Obviously, seeing the 23-24 report will be a way to see where we've caught up. You note that in point 5. When could we expect to see that?
So we're expecting to have that report to you in February, early February next year.
And then we should catch up in June, sorry, through you, Chair, for the next one. So we should get back in sync by that
So
point.
through you, Chair, that would be a normal reporting time for us, given that the second half of the year, so upon the end of the financial years, our consent holders, TLAs, major consent holders will need to send us significant annual reports on their own consent. So they do their own consent monitoring and send that through to us, as well as our own monitoring. We then compile compliance monitoring reports for some of our major consent holders, and then we compile this overall compliance report. So it would normally come to you in around February of the year following.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'll go to Councillor Roadley and then Laura after that. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Afternoon, Katrina. I'm looking at, I think it's page 23, although doesn't seem to have page numbers. It's the Municipal Public Water Supply Board Security. Can you just help me understand what is happening in CHB with the graph between 2021 and 21-22? It's the pink line.
Through you, Chair, no, I can't. Sorry, I'll have to come back to you on that one.
Would that be the work at the Waipawa one?
Sorry, Chair, I'm going to have to, I'll have to come back to you on that, Di Rowley.
No worries. Thanks, Katrina.
Di.
Laura.
Kia ora, thank you, Katrina and Roger. I'm just asking a question around considerations of tangata whenua. How are the kaitiaki identified and trained?
Are you referring to a specific page, Laura?
I hope I'm on the right agenda item. Page 18 of the agenda. Number 11, paragraph 11, 12, 13 and 14.
Sorry, I'm just having to flip between documents, so give me one minute.
I have to flick between the report as well. I think it's great that this monitoring's happening. I think it's fantastic. I just want to know how we identify and train our kaitiaki.
Right.
Maybe Te Wairama is a better place to answer that one, Katrina?
No, the attached report says
No, yeah.
ways we've improved our engagement and compliance matters. So through you, Chair, that would be normally through consent conditions that require tangata whenua engagement. And for example, the Wairoa District Council wastewater discharge consent to the Wairoa River has a liaison, tangata whenua liaison group. So our compliance team are part of that group and working with tangata whenua in terms of that consent and the conditions that are requiring to be monitored. So it is generally through consent conditions that are requiring that engagement.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Curtin and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I wonder if I could take you to, we probably need some page numbers on these so it's clear.
Yeah.
But figure 28, let's start there. And this is regard to municipal consents. And figure 28 tells us municipal wastewater consent. The figure 29, municipal stormwater consents, and figure 30. Can you tell me if figure 30 relates to, what consents does it relate to? Storm or waste? And each of those, Hastings, for example, the next one, figure 31, if we could just have some clarity with the name of that table or that figure, identifying what consents that it relates to, or is it in fact a combination of both storm and waste?
Figures 29 and 30, through you, Chair, are municipal stormwater. My apologies for the lack of title on there. Figures 31 is stormwater, figures 32 is stormwater, as is figure 33. Is
Okay.
that correct? Yeah.
Right, it's under subheading.
Yes.
Got
Yeah, it just
municipal
needs to
stormwater.
add the.
Yes,
name
that's
in there.
correct.
Thank you. Just for clarity then, I just wanted to look at Central Hawke's Bay's wastewater and just get a clearer picture of what's happening there. It's all over the show in terms of the different compliance taking place. Where's it going? Are we on top of that?
Through Chair, that trend for Central Hawke's Bay is unfortunately continuing. They have had quite a large work program for many years now. I think it was called WOW, WOW, consent program that they were preparing for in terms of transferring discharges from essentially moving all of their smaller wastewater discharges through to a larger plant, eventuating in Waipukaro. They are still ongoing through that consent process. Their compliance has not improved in the 23-24 financial year. And it is likely they will be graded significantly in non-compliance for significant discharge volumes over the previous financial year going forward. So in the report that we are yet to do. So that trend is continuing of non-compliance.
And are we having pretty significant conversations with CHB about that and where we land next or over the next 6 months?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. Just scroll back up a bit. The number of consents I'm trying to find, it says something like 3,526 or whatever consents are required to be monitored out of the 8,000 odd that are in place. What's the criteria for a consent, just out of interest, being required to be monitored?
We prioritise our consents depending on the risk to the environment. So we always try and get all our priority 1 consents done, and then we go down priority 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Right, so are the 380.25 all priority 1?
Sorry,
Are they all priority 1s or are they?
300.
Yeah, whatever that number is.
I might be able to help the councillor here because I have a related question. Perhaps we can combine. So I'm looking at para 3 of the report where it explains the grading, where it explains priority 1 as being either high risk, consent holders has a history of non-compliance or are regionally significant. And so my question from that was going to be, is there either existing reporting focused on the level of compliance in those priority 1s, those real, the high focus areas where our goal, our level of service is to look at them all every year? Do we separately report on the degree of compliance amongst that group? And if not, would we be able to have a report like that or a graph like that for next year? Because that, I feel, would give us more information that would really talk about our focus and and what level of compliance we're achieving on those highest risk areas.
Yeah. Through you, Chair, we would have to change the way that we're reporting. So, but we can actually we can look at that for the next report. Yep.
Thank you. So back to Councillor Williams. Are you happy?
I wasn't at all clear in my mind that priority one, of which we are to monitor all, was the same thing as consent that required monitoring. That was
No,
kind of a
it's,
question.
no, priority one, we are required to monitor 100% of those.
Yeah.
And the other consents that we monitor, we're required to monitor 95% of all other consents. So that number of the 3,000 odd consents that we've monitored are not all priority ones. They are some, but they are also a mix of other priority 2 to 5 consents. What Councillor Harding is just asking is in the next report, can I break it down based on priority consents? And the answer is yes, in the next report we can.
Yeah, sure.
Largely a priority 1 consent would be a discharge to water or a contaminant discharge.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm still unclear on what makes a consent qualify as being required, this council being required to monitor it. Is it a judgment call on each and every consent?
Yes, so the compliance team will assess the consent that has been granted, and based on the criteria ratings priority 1 to 5, so they are set criteria, we can provide those too. We determine what the priority rating of that consent is, and then that determines whether it's monitored or not.
And I'll come to Councillor Ormsby in a moment.
I've got a few to go, but.
I think I'll come to Councillor Orsby and we'll come back to you if there's time. But I'll just note that by volume, a large number of the consents that are monitored are irrigation consents, and that's limited. So that monitoring is a semi-automated process. So just out of interest, are those partly there's a level of pragmatism involved in the monitoring, in that some are easier to monitor either automatically or semi-automatically, as opposed to others?
I don't think we monitor based on pragmatism, but you are correct. In terms of the irrigation consents, there is a lot of telemetry data that's coming into the consents, the compliance team. That still requires them to look at that data and write a report on that. It doesn't mean that we're going out to site and checking every one of those, but we do compliance checks on bores and flow volumes.
And I might be clarify, our water services team look after all the telemetry side of things. If there are any exceedances or whatever, then they'll pass it on to my team and then we'll look into it. So we don't actually physically monitor that, it's done by someone else.
It's monitored by exception, Thank you. Councillor Ormsby.
Kia ora, Chair, thank you. Thanks, Katrina and Rob. I'm looking at figure 38, burning complaints. And I see 22, 23 year. Could you provide some insight on themes to the types of complaints that we're getting? If there's a running theme there, or a certain time of year, certain type of catchment, can you just give us some insight there? And then if you'd indulge me after the question, Chair, a plug. Anyway, we'll let them answer
A
the
quick
question.
plug, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think I know where you're going.
Do you want to answer or do you want me to? So I think through you, Chair, the number of burning complaints that we are getting, as you can see, are decreasing, although there seems to be a spike in 22, 23. I can't answer that. I'd need some more information from the team who are not here. We generally get complaints first and foremost as a result of smoky fires, and then infringements are issued largely based on what is being burnt. So prohibited items being burnt will largely have enforcement action taken. Whereas we try to take an education-first approach for vegetation like fires that are smoky. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think a lot of the complaints we're getting are urban than actually rural now, they're
Okay.
coming down, so.
Okay. And can I please ask or encourage that if the timing is right for an educational campaign, now the winter burn ban is off, and an encouragement to the public to call the pollution hotline as soon as they see it,
Yes.
without repercussion of
Yes.
doing so?
That's right, absolutely. As I said, we always take an education first approach. So if somebody does ring the pollution hotline, we at least can go out and have a conversation with that party that is burning, try and educate them how they might do it differently.
Thank you.
Right, I think we've got time for one more question from Councillor Williams.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. I mean, it is an important report. A lot of time's gone into it, and I don't think I can do justice to my governance role in taking the time to read the report if I can't ask the questions I want to ask. I'll try and keep it down to one, but I've actually got four. Leave that in your hands. I'll take a pick. Forestry. Has slash been a major issue in terms of compliance for forestry in this region?
Through you, Chair, the short answer to that is no. Slash is not our most major concern in terms of forestry. Rather, it is sediment and sediment into waterways, and it is runoff.
All right, well, I'll leave it there, Chair.
Carry on. I'll indulge you for a
Thank
short
you.
time, Councillor Williams.
I'll keep it brief if I can. The wastewater, commercial industrial wastewater, the number of low-risk non-compliances has decreased. The number of moderate risk has more than doubled from 5 to 11. Is there an issue here? Is there a trend here? Reasons, and are we doing anything about it?
Sorry, was that the wastewater compliance?
No, commercial and industrial wastewater.
Not sure through you, Chair. Can I come back to you on that one?
Sure.
Sorry.
I'll leave it there, Chair. I understand your
I
time
think
restrictions.
through you, Chair, there is significant issues for us, and there was prior to Cyclone Gabriel, in fairness to what is actually a good question. So my apologies for not being able to answer it completely. Prior to Cyclone Gabriel, the compliance team were significantly concerned about industrial discharges, particularly in the likes of industrial areas such as Awatoto, and we were taking a real targeted campaign to that. Cyclone Gabriel did put paid to that for us, and it is an area that the compliance team will need to pick up again to ensure that we are focusing the same amount of compliance effort on industrial activity as we do rural activities.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I would like to know what's the status with the Napier City wastewater outfall, but
I can answer that really quickly.
Carry
And
on.
that is
And
that.
look, Laura, if you've got a quick question after that, we'll go to that and then we'll knock off.
So through you, Chair, Napier City Council have been incredibly proactive. They've had divers out there in that, in this financial year or
Yep.
last financial year?
No, this financial year.
You can answer it, go.
So we just received the report from Napier City Council, and they've had divers inspect the outfall in early November 2023, and they've completed another dive in April 24 and another follow-up dive in June 2024. So they've found some blockages which they've worked on and unblocked it. So they do that, and they're out there regularly on boats, and I've sent some of my compliance staff with them as well. They're looking at their pipeline.
So they've generally got good compliance and good maintenance regime on the outfall.
it's not any longer discharging untreated sewage, it's
The
leaking out of the
wastewater
pipe.
treatment plant, no, it is no longer discharging untreated. It is, they are back to treating.
the pipe's still leaking. That's right?
Not at the moment, no.
Oh, great,
And that's what
okay.
they check with the
Yeah, okay.
divers.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you, yeah.
Thank you. So Laura, quick question?
Really quick, and I know this is about consents, but Do we have any data on when there's been no consent and there's been breaches? I know this is about consented activities, but do we have anything around unconsented activities that have been complained about from neighbours? Do you have any data on that?
Yes, I can. But it's not in this report. That would be part of our enforcement activities.
Oh, okay.
And so some
Well, thank
of it is in the report, Laura.
Oh, yeah, cool. Thank you. I think enforcement needs to be a bit more harsher, eh? Jeez.
Thank you, Laura. Right, so can we move to the motion? The motion is to receive the report and adopt it.
Happy to move, Mr Chair.
And councillor Curtin moves, councillor Sears seconds. Would you like to speak to those motions?
Just very briefly, thank you for the report. We keep improving it over time, and it's reduced in size. I'm very pleased to see that. But also encouraging that in the 2022-23 year, the year of Gabriel, that we've managed to keep significant compliance under control, which I think is an impressive outcome for the team. So well done for that. Very hard conditions to work in from your perspective, but it seems as though we've been quite successful in managing what was probably our highest risk environmental impacts for a long time. So thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, councillor Curtin. Councillor Sears.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree. Thank you to both of you and your teams. This part of our business is absolutely core business and so important. And it's an excellent report. I'm looking forward to February to see how those numbers have rolled through. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'll put, you want to talk to the motion?
Just very briefly, look, thank you for the fact that we've now got the year by year. That's an innovation to this report, and it shows trends. Can I just say to those councillors, Councillor McIntosh, and anyone else, we have to be very careful as governors in saying about what our preferences are for the manner in which the enforcement team goes about its business. It is a real area of a need for an absolute bright line between governance and operations. Going harder, going softer are not really comments I think we should be making. We can set a policy, but for obvious, almost constitutional reasons, we just need to sort of stay out of that and understand the picture. Having said all of that, I do appreciate the comment in there that you have, over the circumstances of the last year, trended towards a warning approach rather than a prosecution. That is acknowledged, but we just need to be very careful about how we, discuss this type of issue.
Thank you, councillor Williams. So we'll move to, I'll put the motion, which is that we're receiving, considering, and essentially adopting the report. Do I have a mover? Oh, sorry, well, actually, we've already put that, so we'll just go to the vote. Thank you very much. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, team. So that is it for decision items. So now we're going to speed date some information and performance monitoring items. We've got 2 or 3 we can probably move through quite quickly. You might want to spend a little bit more time on health, safety and wellbeing, I suspect, and then HBRIC and the RRA we might want to have a little bit more time for. So if we can knock a few of the others off in 15 minutes or so, that would be fantastic. So.
Kia ora
Welcome.
tātou. So I'm presenting the quarter 4 organisational performance report here today. I'll take the paper as read, but I'll just do a little bit of a recap. We've been running this port for 6 years now, and we've got some good trends of data in there that we could show so we can see, track how we're working. We have about 50 to 70 staff who contribute to this report every quarter as well. And we're one of the few regional councils that actually do a report in this format as well. So we bring it to you so you can actually see what's going on. We do try and look at the more celebratory highlights as well as tracking performance. So it has a breadth of information in it as well. This time we have got a little bit more information in our financial reporting. So after feedback from the last meeting, we have put in our groups of activity, our activity lines as well. So you'll be able to see the income and funding for those in the report, and we hope to do that going forward as well. We don't have our level of service measures in there because you'll see in a later paper, they're in our interim annual report as well. So Chris, have you got anything to add about the financials? Or should we just take some questions?
I would just very quickly mention in the financials, obviously in the main report, para 11 and 12 talk about the general fund surplus in there. Talks about a general fund surplus on the groups of activities, which excludes the corporate one. Once we add in the deficit from the corporate investment income, that comes back to our $2.3 million deficit on general funds, which we mentioned in the carry forwards paper.
Thank you. We'll go to questions. Councillor McIntosh.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? People and capability in the report on page 7. On the face of it, staffing FTEs for the period up to 311, that's 8.3% up on the previous year. And so I just want to confirm, well, actually I'm confirming the bullet point below it. So that actually is almost entirely related to the project management office staff?
Yeah, well, yeah, it correlates, doesn't it? Yeah.
And so would I be sort of correct in saying that, in terms of staffing numbers, we had quite a period prior to that where the council determined via annual plans or that it wanted to bring about a bit of a step change in environmental work and that sort of thing. And as a consequence of that, sort of for the 5 or more years prior to that, there was quite a decent increase in staff numbers over that time. And really, over the last 12 months, that trend has been, I won't say reversed, but at least it's flatlined. And, we've said what we're intending to do in future. But so I just, it's a question but a statement, I suppose, at the same time. I'm seeking your approval that my interpretation is correct.
Yeah, where you see the trends and where it has gone up, it's usually following the implementation of a long-term plan where there's been a bit of a step change in our levels of service. So yeah, that's a good assumption to make, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, Brother Lowell here. I will ask a question, and it might be relevant to a later item as well. If I could just ask, page 8, health, safety and wellbeing. I look at the graph and I've drawn a line of an increasing trend there, and that might be somewhat skewed by the June result, whether it's a blip. So I'm just interested in whether there is an upward trend in incidents or whether June was just an exception, please.
Ask Kirsty to come up, if that's
Go
all
on,
right.
Kirsty.
To have an answer to that.
Yes, there has been an increase in reporting and we are excited by that. We have spent a lot of time encouraging the business to report incidents and the majority of those have been improvement reports. So we welcome an increase. It seems probably odd for most people that when you have an increasing trend for incidents that most people think there must be a problem, but there probably has been issues sitting out there, but because the business is starting to mature around that space, we're getting increased reporting.
If I could just ask a follow-up question, I mean, that's a great answer, thank you. How do we tell the difference between an increase in reporting versus an increase in incidents? Can we actually measure that, or is that just a judgment call we think is?
Well, as I said, for the number of incidents that were reported last month, half of those were improvement reports. So that's around people saying that door hasn't got a correct handle on it, that there might be an improvement notice to how something is hung somewhere, or there's been a tidy up of a yard down at Works Group, rather than our overall incidents. And I can honestly tell you that the type of injuries that we have, the majority of those are sprain strains.
So just to clarify, the numbers that represented in the graph include the improvement reports.
Yeah.
So it's incidents and improvements.
Yeah, so anything under health and safety, we cover off.
Wonderful, thank you.
Improvements as well.
Councillor Sears.
It sort of answered my question, but I suppose I just want to raise it so it's acknowledged. We know that after incredibly stressful times or traumatic times, we know that accidents or near misses tend to rise with the sort of stress post a big event. So that had been my question, probably around the accidents. But I think you've answered those. But perhaps maybe just a comment on how you think in general the organisation and staff are maturing, using your words, through the process and in terms of recovery from Cyclone Gabrielle. Yeah.
So I think we are at a stage where the organisation is maturing in terms of its relationship with health and safety, and people are seeing it in a more positive light, as though it's part of their normal day-to-day activity and not seen as something that someone's coming along with a hammer and telling them off for not doing something. So there's a really positive culture of engagement in that space. In terms of the staff overall, I think our staff are like most of our community. They are fatigued. I think it's been a big 18 months. If we look at our wellbeing statistics in terms of our EAP representation, it features more from a home perspective, and we are not out of line in terms of other businesses who are recording data under our EAP services. So 87% home relationship issues versus 13% work. That's not to say that work isn't culminated in that home situation.
Sure.
But I do think, and as you know, we've talked to our staff broadly and said, you know, we've had a big 18 months. It's been pretty continuous. We do feel the fatigue, but our community is also fatigued. So, and we have a wide understanding of that.
Thank you.
Move in favour? Yep, I'll take that as a mover. Thank you, Councillor Williams. And seconder, Councillor Ormsby. Can I like to speak?
Yeah, just briefly, and it's a bit of a tangent, but it's not, and it's to do with wellbeing, and it's really starting from the place of the, you could call it organisational performance at a reputational level, and acknowledging that we have really taken some pretty severe poundings as a result of a number of external events in particular recently, and I'm concerned at how that's playing out on Facebook. And I know Mike's not here, but this is actually, I think, an important time to actually think about how we use Facebook. We do need to speak through our actions, and this council has done so much in the last 18 months, and we've socialised that on Facebook. But we can't so much as say, hey, look, we've attended a planting day, which would have been all volunteers, right? Oh, they're wasting our rates on bloody planting days. Why don't they stick to their core business, you know? How about, you know, here's some poplars. Oh, they're selling us the poplars that we paid for by rates. It doesn't seem we can do anything right on Facebook, all right? And so when I see the level of activity in Facebook's increased by 28% in terms of comments, I've read some of those comments, and I feel for the staff. It's vitriol. And I just think we need to be very conscious about how we use Facebook strategically to celebrate our successes, and there are many. But what risk does it put us at reputationally and put our staff at, and how useful actually is it? Are there other ways of sharing that good news that don't give keyboard warriors an absolute licence and a platform to be so destructive and toxic? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Ormsby?
Just support what you said, Councillor Williams.
Okay. Would you like to speak, Councillor?
I've got so much to say today, haven't I? I actually just want to say thank you. I think the reporting's excellent. And again, it's designed in a way that gives us the information we need, but is so excellent for our community when they ask us about something specific, so clear in the budget lines and understanding where the money's coming from and the activities. So thank you for continuing to improve that.
Right, no other speakers, put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kirsty, Sarah, Chris. I think Chris will be hanging around for the interim results. You're going to have a busy day, Chris.
Yep, my favourite meeting.
Right.
Do you want me to, and Darren?
We've heard a little bit about the finances so far, but
Darren, sorry, we've got Darren. Darren de Klerk here on this.
right, okay. Welcome, Darren. Come and find a microphone.
There you go.
Do you want me to introduce it?
Yes, no, I can't help myself, sorry. Can I just introduce this? So this is our interim financial results. We are pretty excited to actually get to the end of the year to be able to produce these. We are informing you today of some of those results. We have our external auditors, Ernst & Young, will arrive in the building to start on the HBRIC accounts, then following the HBRC accounts in the coming month, and we will welcome that. Now, at the table today, we've also got Darren de Klerk. As part of the update, I thought it was beneficial today, just as we are looking to run down those silt and debris programs. There's quite a bit of work still to do in there, and Darren is helpfully here to answer any questions, as well as just an insurance update, which is tracking well. But over to Pam and Chris for key points on financial results.
Okay. I just wanted to first of all front foot one question that might come up. In paragraph 17, the table that is included then there in the document had some gremlins in the work where some of the figures copied over were the same budget and actual, so it came out to a zero difference in that. We have uploaded an updated version of that into Stella, and actually, as Councillor Sears pointed out, the financial performance and the organisational performance report is probably the best place to be looking at for goer activity and that in there, so it doesn't really affect the rest of the financial report that we're doing here. This report, as we've been developing over the last number of quarters, is about talking about the overall performance of the council, and is our first look at our year-end performance as we go through into our annual report. The INE shows a slight surplus of $1.6 million against a planned deficit of $20 million. That's really driven through having a number of capital grants that have come in for the work that has followed the cyclone, where that spend happens in the balance sheet on the capital side. So you get a slight mismatch within the INE in that. There's obviously also quite a big impact against budget from the likes of sediment and debris and the cyclone work that has happened through the year. Probably the most significant item in the report here is our revaluation of infrastructure assets, where we have seen over the value of them more than double through the external valuation that we've taken this year. Remembering we did not do a valuation last year on our normal 3-year cycle because of the cyclone, so we have done the valuation this year. As the valuers have gone through, they effectively calculate a value to replace a kilometre of stop bank or other things, and then multiply that out through the amount of stop banks that we have. The cost per unit has significantly increased. They referred to, made reference to the costs that we have incurred in replacing those stop banks, taken a discount off those costs to reflect that they were done under emergency conditions, but still come up with quite a significant increase in cost of construction of stop banks, which, looking at sort of the inflationary adjustments on construction stuff over the last 4 years, is not that surprising. What that has meant is that we are seeing a $253 million increase in valuation of our infrastructure assets, which is our stop banks, pump stations, etc. This has a small impact on our depreciation. Well, small, but most of the stop banks and that are not depreciated, so they don't have an impact there, but the likes of pump stations are, so that increases the amount of depreciation on those items that for this financial year and for the financial year going forward. So we will have costs that are bigger than the budget that we had in there at the moment. From an insurance perspective, that will probably be the bigger impact that is in there, and that we are working through and assessing what that's going to mean at the moment. The comment from the the valuers was that these sorts of increases are likely to happen to a lot of other councils around the country as well as they come up for revaluation. They will use the costs that we have incurred in setting a new baseline for per unit costs in there. So we could see quite a rise across the rest of the country in there, and what the impact of that comes on the insurance market will be quite interesting to see, and we'll be following closely. The other items in the balance sheet where we had quite large compared to our budget were items such as debtors and creditors, where we have, in debtors, large amounts of money for grants and that are owing at the end of the year compared to what we'd put in as a budget, which didn't have those sorts of items in there. And on the creditors side, we have a large amount of money that we have received that we're holding on behalf of other councils around the regional recovery. That both of those areas are fairly much in line with the last financial year as well into there. And then obviously we've got some updates on green loans, the sediment and debris and cyclone insurance in the report as well. And so we'll open up for any questions from anyone.
Thank you, Chris. Questions?
Or any of us.
While other people think, I'll start with one, and it's just around the insurance and just trying to get the clearest possible sort of overview of what our expectations are. So there is a table that at 34 that seems to be saying, to me anyway, that we're expecting to get 12.7 million from NEMA, I think, by the end of the year, which is about 60% of the loss. In broad terms, the other 40, so we expect about 2/3 of that would be what we'd expect to come from our own insurances, being reflecting the 60/40.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. So 60% is NEMA, 40% is insurance. And what we have and are continue to progress with is the NEMA claims. So to date, what we've done is focused on the material stock bank claims. We are moving at the moment through pump stations and drains. And what will be left out of that is sort of edge protection. Now, the other side of this transaction is what's still left to do was that $10 million carry forward that you approved earlier in this meeting. So that's work yet to do. But we carry forward and we do this work always on the assumption that 60% will be funded by NEMA and 40% will be funded by insurance. So we are probably still 12 months away from anywhere near complete, if I'm honest, at this stage.
For both the NEMA and the...
NEMA will finish earlier. We expect, as I said, we'll go through drains, pump stations, edge protection, so that could be at least another 3 to 4 months' work.
Okay, so that kind of... I'll ask my question anyway, but when the cash finally comes in, what happens to it?
Yeah, so the cash that comes in, is that recognised as income?
Pay off any loans
And
that
pay
we've
off
taken
any
out to
loans,
fund the
yeah.
expenditure that we've...
Thank you. Team. Councillor Ormsby.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, team. Kia ora, Darren. Welcome back. And congratulations, although bittersweet, on the Waste Award, the National Waste Award, for the silt and debris work you and your team have done. As I recall, there's still $8 million yet to be decided on the criteria for commercial farming silt and debris, correct? Is it silt and debris or
So
works
in on farm? The commercial fund,
Yes.
there was $8.5 million unallocated in that fund.
Yeah.
That is separate from the silt and debris fund that's in this paper.
Okay, thank you very much. But we will be administering that alongside DIA and RRA, is that correct?
So those excess funds at this stage have not had approval to proceed with a further program of work, which initially we had attempted for pastoral allocation. That has not been approved.
So I just note that there's in the RRA paper that's coming up at the end, there's some information on that.
Could I please have one more question for Darren? Darren, we came and visited the silt site out in Esk, and at the time, it was very windy. We had dust everywhere, so we stayed in the bus on our tour. How's it been managing those sites until we get to the completion of shutting them down and working alongside Te Whatu Ora on on the dust problem?
Yeah, kia ora, Chair Ormsby, and through you, Chair. Dust has been super challenging. I guess that's why we did the work last year to try and understand the impacts of dust. And obviously, so the report was released probably about a month or 6 weeks ago. That obviously found some positive results. One with obviously the logging that was done throughout Hawke's Bay, as well as with the soil sampling and sediment sampling that we've done to date. So between the two of them, it's obviously been pretty positive. It's a super, big challenge to try and do the cleanup work while trying to manage the dust implications, among other challenges as well, like runoff and sediment control, etc. I think the biggest win we can get is just try and complete it as quickly as we possibly can, and implement the controls we can. So, it's pretty hard to work against the wind, but we can do stuff on site with the work that our contractors do, as well as try and get grass strike as quickly as possible onto those open fields. But yeah, when we have wind like we did that day, it's pretty challenging, especially in Esk Valley where it does pick up. And
Through you, Chair, when is the completion date of that site?
We've probably got two main areas that are probably got a little bit more work to do, and one being Esk Valley, the other being up in Puketapu, Omaranui area. We are forecasting end of September to complete the remaining jobs. I think in the report it talks about 80 odd jobs left. I think we're into the early 70s. There's a couple that have got a long tail, but end of September we'll have finished the collection component, and then we move into remediation. Some of that remediation is already happening, but we'll remediate the 16 odd sites that we set up to collect the material.
Great, thank you, and a tremendous job. Thank you.
Yeah, Susie.
Can I, sorry, through you, Chair, just add one more point to this fund, under the contract with the Crown, the silt and debris fund must be spent and used by the 31st of December. So that is the date in which everything needs to be shut down, closed, and spent. Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll move to the recommendation. Receive and note interim results. Staff report. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Ormsby and I think Councillor Curtin, seconder. Thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
Thanks.
Right, put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. I think we've got non-financial reports to match the financials now. Item 9. Who's going to present that? Sarah's back.
Back for the speed dating.
Yep.
Yeah. Flying solo on this one. Thank you, Chair. So alongside the financial reports, interim financial reports, I'm presenting the levels of service measures for the last year of our long-term plan. They're only an indication of our measures. They still need to go through audit, and sometimes we have discussions about maybe changing some of them, so they are not our final results. There are some highlighted sections where I'm still waiting for information. I get the maritime incidents quite late, so I often put them in towards the end. What else can I say? Our current auditors have requested that we don't use a partially achieved measure as well. So I know it looks quite high that there are a lot of measures that we have not achieved, but in the past we've marked quite a few of them partially achieved. This is an example of one as if it's we need to prepare a report and also an operating plan. So we may have achieved one of those and not the other. We would normally have mark that as partially achieved, but we have to now mark them not achieved as a recommendation from our current auditors. So we have 58 measures that we measure. We have flagged that 37 of those were achieved, which is around 64%, 18 not being achieved, which is around 31%, and 5 are not measured or due for reporting this year as well, and there are various reasons for that. So I always put a little analysis about why we might not achieve those targets. This year, or last year, there was a lot of knock-on effects from Cyclone Gabrielle, which included staff being diverted into other programs of work and also workloads escalating as a result of the cyclone. I think it's good to acknowledge that. There are some external forces impacting staff's ability to do their work. including turnover, vacancies of key roles, and also change in legislation at a national level. And then those results are outside of our direct control, like road crashes, maritime incidents as well. I think that's probably all I probably need to say, but happy to take some questions if there are any.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions? Do we have any? Whilst the team are thinking, have a question which might be applicable to the acting manager of integrated catchment management. If Mr. Wakeland could come up and occupy the microphone just in case he's got some information. Thank you. On page 53 of the report, notes that the Farm Environmental Management Plan program ceased activity in May 2023, and it was a pretty high level of compliance at that point. Just interested in what happens instead, or and what's going on in relation to the National Freshwater Farm Plan program, please.
Good question. So the FEMP program ceased in May, and Katrina might be able to join with me on this. And that was obviously during the time of the cyclone, and the expectations at that stage was that the rollout of the freshwater farm plans were going to actually take over from the requirements of FEMP. And the current status?
Current status of freshwater farm plans as of yesterday, and we have put that notice out today, is that they have officially been put on hold by the Minister. So as regards to FEMP, there is a provision still remains in our plan, but at this point in time, it's unlikely that we would reinstate the FEMP program while we wait for further direction from the Minister on freshwater farm plans. So they will sit in abeyance for now.
Right, okay, so just for the sake of absolute clarity for those people, farmers in Tuki who have a plan, that means they don't have to do anything more at this stage. If they've completed their last plan, they wait for us to tell them.
That's correct. What we would say, however, is that they've already invested quite a lot of money in that plan, and they shouldn't let that investment go. So our encouragement to all farmers who currently have a FEMP or have a farm plan or about to have a farm plan is to continue that work. Farm plans, freshwater farm plans are not going away. Simply the regime that they were proposed under is likely to change, but farm plans will still be needed.
Yep.
It's a pause, not a stop.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep, and just in case there's any doubt on where I stand, I think they're a fantastic tool, and when they come back through the current government, they're probably a sharper tool than they were when we were looking at them before, so welcome it. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, we can move to adopt the report. Do I have a mover for receiving and noting?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sears, and a seconder. Councillor McIntosh, would you like to speak to that? No? Councillor McIntosh, no? All right. All those in favour, say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Right, Health, Safety and Wellbeing Strategic Plan. Are we going to welcome back Kirsty for this one?
We've got Kirsty and Matt McGrath to join Kirsty to take us through the current strategic plan. And with Matt here, just to answer any questions you may have on health and safety.
I have some Word copies if anyone would like to see it. The strategic plan.
It's great.
So, Right, so we can take the paper as read.
Thank
when we
you.
get there, but if there's anything you want to particularly highlight, the floor is yours.
Thank
Or we can go straight to questions.
I'd just like to say kia ora and good afternoon. We're very excited about this plan because it's the first time we've actually culminated our wellbeing strategy and our health and safety and wellbeing plan, strategic plan. And we've included, I guess, our risk maturity matrix in this, in the background as consideration. And we've also included the 4 pillars, the Mason Jury 4 pillars. So we've consulted on this widely. It does fit into our key risk areas, which fits in with our risk maturity plan, and it also speaks to our alignment with ISO 45000. And then talks about our principles. So that's leadership, personal responsibility, partnership and consultation, accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement. So we're excited. We like this plan.
Thank you, Kirsty. And look, from our part, various councillors have raised in recent months concern as to ensure that we are doing our bit as councillors for overview of health, safety and wellbeing. And this, we're treating this as an opportunity to have a slightly broader discussion for those who wish it. So I'll open the floor to questions.
Yeah, just
Councillor
to say
Williams.
thank you, Chair. I don't have a question at the moment. I just really do appreciate the visibility of this issue being out of this table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo, just well done with putting this together while looking at wellbeing and safety. And also to produce a high-level sort of vision, values document that we can be involved in, we can talk with you, with the team. And I know that you bring us reports either to audit and risk, and now we've got it here, which we want a visibility of all councillors. So I feel like that we are getting a broader view and oversight of the state of health and safety within the organisation. So thank you for doing this. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Councillor Curtin.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask the extent of the strategy and its application. For example, does it incorporate contractors? So it occurs to me to be, if you like, internally focused strategy that is applying to our own HBRC staff, our employees. Does it also include contractors to the organisation, and is there a separate approach for the likes of a contractor, and then going out further, public safety as well? For example, a machine working, in a public place and protecting a bystander, if you like. So, what's the scope of the strategy?
So this strategic plan covers everyone who falls under the umbrella of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. So that's everyone sitting around the table, our elected members. It covers off our volunteers, because under the legislation we're required to treat our volunteers as we would do our own people. So it covers off all of our staff. It also covers off all the work that we do with contractors, because we have a level of assurance and required under the legislation to ensure that our contractors are also treated and recorded as part of our work. So if we've got a contractor working out in the field and an incident occurs, there's an expectation from health, safety and wellbeing and the project that it might be aligned to, so say in the IPMO, that incident will be recorded. I get to see the investigation report and I get to go through that with the contractor to ensure that there's been the completed out corrective actions, that we are satisfied that that's occurred. So this strategic plan covers off everyone who has work or works underneath HBRC. Yep. So in our health and safety management system, and this hasn't been in place certainly for as long as I've been here, and likely for 12 years before, all of our contractors have to be site-wise or equivalent or better approved. So there can be no contractor unless you're sitting at a council desk with a tag around your neck, so you're an internal contractor, but any external contractor who works for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council must have a level of health and safety certification under whatever that certification or accreditation process is, and ours is site-wise, as is for most councils in the region.
Right, I'll go to Councillor McIntosh and then Councillor Roadley. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just mindful, these things work best, as you've mentioned, when everyone buys into them right at an individual level. And sorry if you've covered this somewhere, but have we, do we have some way of assessing that? So you know that someone who's often quite remote from the organisation is as plugged into health and safety as they need to be? Like, I don't know, are there measures that other entities do to assess that?
So for us, this particular plan will sit on our Ko Wharawhara site, which is our intranet. Alongside that, my team and myself, we meet with every group across the business, and that is layered within. So where we have staff who are working in a remote part of the business, say up in Wairoa or down in Waipawa, we attend those meetings as well, and that information is fed down. So this document will actually go out through our Health and Safety and Wellbeing Committee, of which we have representation from right across the business, sits within that Health and Safety Wellbeing Committee. So this document will go all the way and out through that group as well, with links so that people can view it. In terms of our strategic document, we're quite happy to share this with other councils as well. We have a good relationship both with HDC and NCC and down into Central. We are very much of the opinion, and we've all been meeting a little bit more recently, around not reinventing the wheel. So we pride ourselves on the fact that we are taking a leadership role in the region.
Thank you. Councillor Roadley.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, Kirsty. Great report. And could I also request to have one popped in a paper one in my cubbyhole before you leave? Kirsty, how, this is possibly a little bit to what you've just spoken to, but more about the how do you share the report physically? So you've got some volunteers up in the back blocks of Mahia planting some trees. How do they get oversight over this report? And secondly, how do you share it for our staff when they're working beyond our BAUs? So, for example, our staff who end up in CEDAM, how does this report then get daylight onto them there?
So part of our integration on any documentation, so whether it's the health and safety wellbeing strategy, a new change in process policy, that is delivered throughout our Health and Safety and Wellbeing Committee. Under ISO 45000, we're required to consult widely. Our intranet is available to all of our staff, regardless of how remote they are. All of our staff have a laptop. And so on our Ko Wharawhara page, we have a health and safety hub. And on that page as well is where this document sits and is highly visible to the staff. We'll also socialise this through our internal intranet publication called Snappy. And so this will be featured in that document as well. So all of our documents under ISO 45000 are required to be socialised from the top to the bottom and further out. Civil Defence is actually one of our key groups, and so one of my staff attend those meetings monthly.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. Look, as I say, very excited to see this at the table again. The issue of due diligence raised for us as officers at paragraph 11.2. Can you give me 3 practical ways in which I can discharge my due diligence obligation as an officer of this organisation with respect to Ensuring that the organisation complies with its health and safety duties. What are 3 practical ways that I can be sure I've done that?
One way is to receive our reports and our high-level dashboard and understand that. And if you've got any questions, you can always come back to me as the lead of health and safety and
that's
ask me.
the dashboard and the organisational performance report,
Yep.
right? Okay,
And happy to discuss that level of reporting at any stage if you have any questions. The other one, and look, we have talked about this for a while, but we have been a little bit busy post-cyclone. But we wish to take you out with us. In fact, we would love to take you out on site so you can see when we meet with contractors the sorts of questions and observations that we do that are recorded, to attend a startup meeting when you can hear what our expectations are when we're setting up a process or a project for a contractor. And also to actually provide, if you have the opportunity to come and sit with the team and talk with the team about any ideas that you might have that you are not seeing in our publications or our documents, we welcome that. Continuous improvement's really important in the health and safety space. We're moving quite ambitiously towards ISO 45000. It gives us much more certainty. We are moving at a pace that is reasonable for the business. But again, I welcome the opportunity for you to come out with us and see the level of assurance that we provide across the business. Now, we have discussed this before in a previous council meeting of how we might go about that. And so I might work through you, Chair, to see we can provide some dates and opportunities, and, give you at least 4 to 6 weeks notice and provide that opportunity. And then if you all can't come, we don't expect to get a bus, but if you all don't have the opportunity within a period of time to come out, at least your other colleagues around the table will be able to provide that assurance and feedback.
Thank you.
Can I have
Let's
one?
work together there.
Well, maybe just as a little bit of a prompt, the risk maturity framework as well. Can you just comment for the benefit of Councillor Williams and us all, that's another part of the overall risk framework?
Yes, the risk maturity, we take that really seriously. So we are ahead of the game in that space. We've applied our metrics from our executive leadership team reporting that we do into that document as well. We also have Chris Dolly, who is our champion, and so that is regularly updated and regularly scheduled to be updated, to be looked at as we move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. Look, tell me about, I just wanted to see if I was travelling through a week in the life of the executive leadership team, how would I see health and safety play out in that week in the way they interface with their staff or consider the reporting of risks or identifying those risks or handling those risks? Is it a day-to-day thing? Is it a weekly thing? How does it sort of play out within the workplace?
So I'm scheduled to meet with ELT every 3 weeks. I meet with, Susie's my GM, so I meet with her every 2 weeks. I meet with Nick every month. Every time there's an incident reported in the organisation, the GM is the first person, one of the first people to know. So the GM, the direct manager and myself are the first people to know that that incident has occurred. So there's quite a high degree of contact within the business. We also attend every group monthly meeting with a full health and safety update. And that has a précis of incidents as well as anything that we've got going on in the health and safety space or what we want the staff to know about and to take forward into their wider teams and have a discussion about.
But more proactively, are each of those ELT leads in their own teams discussing health and safety on
Yes.
a regular basis? I mean, how does that work?
Yep, so I'm not sure how often, and I couldn't say categorically that every single GM would meet every week with their management team, but we attend all of those management meetings as well. And we give that update to them, and then that gets circulated out to all of the staff within that group, as well as any other touch points that I have, maybe with Susie, with Nick, and or any GM over an incident. So as soon as, if you would have an incident and you reported it, it automatically goes directly to the GM. At the same time, it directly goes to the manager, and it directly comes to me, and it comes up straight away, and I see it straight away. So.
If I could just ask, just in relation to that, just backing up. So before we get to incidents, we have work procedures, and essentially if the work procedure is right and health and safety is baked into that, then we don't have the incidents.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a little bit of insight into that process of building work procedures, building health and safety into it?
Yep, so, excuse me, so every work, we call them work methods here now. They used to be called codes of practice. But 2 years ago, we risk scored each and every one of those work methods. And when they come up for renewal, so they all come up at different times depending on the severity of or the risk nature of that particular task. And when they do come up for renewal, then we look at it, we speak with the subject matter experts within the group. So if it's works group and it's to do with tractor driving, we'll speak with the tractor drivers. We'll make sure that document or that process still fits the brief, and then we'll re-look at any of the critical risk controls that we've got in that document. And then that will then go back through either the Works Group Health and Safety Committee, and then it'll come up into our Health and Safety Committee, and then it goes into our document control system.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions from me. Page 9 of the STRAT plan mentions 5 critical risks. I was trying to understand what those critical risks are, because there are 4, elsewhere in the report we have 4 key risk areas. And I was trying to understand the difference between a critical risk and a key risk area.
So our key risk areas are related to the risk maturity framework. We have 5 critical risks in the organisation that sit as our main register, and they are documented into our daily safety plan and our community safety plan. So they are things like environment, driving, people, public. I can't remember what the 5th one is, but yeah. So we went out to the organisation a number of years ago and looked at and asked the organisation what they thought the 5 critical risks are. We evaluate those every year and look at them again. And they are risk scored against the matrix which sits in our health and safety management system. So they have all the controls, so pre-risk controls and then post-risk scored again. So anything that would sit in red or in 20 and above, if our matrix is set on 5 by 5, has to have GM approval. So, yeah.
Right, thank you. And second question, just on the alignment to ISO 45001, is there a discrete timeline around that? Or is that how does that work? How do we know when we've arrived there?
There is a discrete time. We're hoping to be in a position to have another desktop review against our documentation, hopefully within 12 months. And then once we've got our paper in place, or our words in place, then we will go to audit against that ISO 45000 framework. But it is an ambitious move. Our ACC workplace safety management system was light and compared to ISO 45000. That particular standard was an abridged standard for ACC to get people into a discount program. And I have one staff member completely dedicated to that process.
Okay, but we don't have a date. We don't have a specific date.
Not yet.
Okay, thank you. There are no other questions. I think we can move on to the recommendation that we receive and note the strategic plan. And I personally think you both, actually be pretty quiet there, Matt, but I know you sit in behind and make sure that it's all as it needs to be. So look, thank you very much. This has been a conversation that I know some councillors have been really keen for, and we all take it particularly seriously. So yeah, you always give us what we need to know and confidence that the organisation is on the right track. Thank you. So if could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mover, Councillor Williams, seconder, Councillor McIntosh. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Just on the issue of wellbeing, it has been front of mind and back of mind and middle of mind, just how much pressure, and to Councillor Sears' point, I think it was, well, maybe it was Councillor Rhodley, pressure can lead to accidents, but pressure has its own wellbeing stress anyway. And so it's great to see that that's right at the heart of all of this, because I think what every person in this organisation's taken on is well above and beyond call of duty. So we need to be very conscious of that, I think.
Councillor McIntosh.
Yes, I just wanted to commend Kirsty's suggestion of us being involved with some of your work, and it'd be really great to get a schedule or something that we could attend, even if it's one or two or three of us at a time.
We really welcome that, actually.
There's no other speakers. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So we now move on to afternoon tea.
Thank you.
Bang on time. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Matt. And look, we can have the full 10 minutes.
Outstanding.
See you at 3:45.
Firstly, I'd just like to introduce, we've got Amberly Gibson, who is our new Climate Change Lead Strategic Advisor. She's been with us for 7 weeks, and she comes most recently to us from MFE, where she was the overall lead on the first National Adaptation Plan. So we're really lucky to have her on board with her set of skills. Also have James Park, who's a management accountant, and he is sort of the lead in terms of our own corporate carbon footprint. So any tricky questions on that, direct to James. So I will quickly sort of just run through the paper. It is predominantly a backward-looking report, so it's looking, it's reporting on the work that we've done over the 2023-24 year, as it is one of our 58 level of service measures in our 2021 long-term plan. The report really has 5 parts. First bit is a quick comment on the outreach work. You'll remember that Pippa Sebaloo McKelvey was the first dedicated resource that we had that worked in the climate action space, and her role was Climate Action Ambassador. We have reframed that role to be Amberly's, which is a Climate Change Lead Strategic Advisor. So that outreach component of the job has changed somewhat, and that reflects that we now have a joint committee, and that role can be taken up by the governors more. Also, the paper covers what we've done to reduce our own corporate carbon footprint. It briefly touches on the work of the Climate Action Joint Committee, the community carbon footprint, which is our regional emissions, and then it briefly comments on the work that the planning team are doing on the climate change chapter for the RPS. And we are happy to take any questions.
All right, go to questions. Okay, whilst people are cogitating, my question is in relation to our corporate goals. So at point 2, carbon neutral by 2025, carbon zero, I should say, and that's someone's just forgot to put the words net in there, but I'm sure the intention was probably net because we're not going to get to gross by next year. But more to the point, at 11.1.1, we talked about the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which would require 42% reduction from our baseline by 2030, and that still is quite confronting when most of our, and I think the figures are in here, something like more than 80% of our corporate carbon footprint is from our vehicles and works group. How's it looking? What do we have to do to meet that Science-Based Targets Initiative by 2030, and are we on track, please?
Through you, Chair. Are we on track? We've had some good news for 23-24, in that we had a 17% reduction, which was basically double what we need to achieve on a year-on-year basis, given the peak that we had within 22-23 with the post-cyclone activity work that we did. Obviously, that 22-23 peak is somewhat outsized. We are hamstrung against the baseline we have of 2019-2020, which was a relatively low volume year, thanks to COVID. So we started from a low base, and that 42% of that science-based target, that's based on, as you quite rightly state, gross emissions reduction, and that is with the 2050 net zero target in mind, as is in line with the Paris Accords, etc. We have a number of steps that we would need to take in order to be able to make a 42% reduction by 2030. I would say that, and hopefully Susie will agree with me here, that we have started that analysis. We are considering how to make that approach. That 42% reduction is fairly ambitious, I would describe, for this organisation, given the nature of the work that we do. And as you astutely pointed out, the nature of our vehicles and fleet, we don't have an available replacement option at the moment. What we're working through is the floor or the minimum amount of internal combustion engines that we would need to keep. And once we understand that, we then understand basically the minimum amount of emissions that we will have, and then we have to work around with the wiggle room that we have. So we're sort of figuring that puzzle out at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Councillor Sears.
It's actually probably to you, Chair, now that you're Chair of the Joint Climate Committee. I'd still like to understand a little bit the interface between our own internal goals and what's now been driven by the Joint Climate Action Group, how those are interfacing, or how we should see them as two completely separate work streams, or?
So the starting proposition is that the Joint Committee is looking at the regional emissions as a whole, not just those of the local authorities. We do use that forum to also look at the local authority individual carbon footprints. So it's a way to encourage, support, and not put feet to the fire, but just make sure there's continuing focus and there's a consistent focus across the region. But the main difference is regional versus the local authority own footprint.
So our staff are working entirely within this organisation, or we're sharing staff resources across the Climate Action Group? A Joint Climate Committee?
Both. Ourselves, Hastings District Council and Napier City Council really form the backbone of that Climate Joint Committee of the regional climate action response.
Okay. So there's no information lost between the two because it's working really closely together. We're not ending up with sort of two silos that aren't interacting.
I believe so, but
Yeah, I can, through you, Chair, just add to what you said. We have a technical advisory group that Amberley convenes, and there is a lead person from Central Hawke's Bay, Napier, Hastings, and we're working with Wairoa to have an identified person. And then their role is to go into their organisation, seek out the information they need, and then bring it back to, it's a very small, tight tag at the moment. We've brought that back since Amberley came on board, and that's working well. Yeah, early days, but yeah, no, it's working well.
It's great, reassuring. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. Look, and great to meet you, Emily, and I'm particularly excited about the word lead in your title. Are you the lead climate change strategic advisor, or do you advise on how do we show leadership as an organisation, I guess? Is it the emphasis on the word lead there and sort of inspiring our communities? Is that the idea?
I think through you, Chair, it's there to really recognise that this is a priority for us as a council, and also that it does touch on everything we do. I mean, we've been really clear on that as an organisation, and that there is, as Desiree said, the shift, I guess, in focus too around the integration that we recognise is needed across the work that we're doing, but also leading this climate action joint work program as well.
Okay.
Do you add to that?
So that was my strategic, we've got the joint action group, and then we've got a sort of an ambassadorial or leadership role as an organisation, promoting discussion, initiatives, things people can do in their own lives. And they're a parallel stream, do you think, or? Yeah, I mean, I'm literally trying to understand the relationship between those two programs.
Yeah, I think the lead is really indicating that, she is our subject matter expert, and we are still looking to our governors to be the lead.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just one way we can show leadership, I thought perhaps I was intrigued by the rideshare app. Transport is about 20% of our regional emissions. Is that something that is Lift and Go, is that a carpooling app that other businesses, TNG, hospital, whatever, might be able to or do use? Is it something that we could socialise the success of?
So through you, Chair, yes, that has been the plan. The initial rollout was just for HPRC, the staff here. However, the need for critical mass has become apparent, and so we're looking to extend the rollout to NCC obviously with their location being very handy. And the aim is to build up more critical mass to get more usage using that service.
Thank you. Further questions?
Second.
Go with Martin and then I.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point, the light bulb went on in my head around this pretty recently, that there's often this debate between adaptation and mitigation and the necessary focus now on adaptation. But I would say, and Cyclone Gabriel revealed this, that mitigation is always going to be cheaper than adaptation. If a 12-hour rain event can cause $5 billion worth of damage, what could you do with $5 billion as a region to mitigate the effects of climate change? How much public transport could we run? How much reforestation could we do? How much solar could we install? It would be utterly transformational. We don't blink at the idea. Yes, we must spend, we must recover, and yet everyone balks at the slightest additional cost to their profit and loss from mitigation. It's completely wrong-headed. So inspire, lead, please show the way on climate change mitigation. All power to you. Thank you, Chair.
Second that, we'll have the vote now, shall we?
Just a warm welcome to Emily, and thank you for conducting, on behalf of the TAG, the last joint committee meeting, in the topics, and it was actually the first time that we've had a robust discussion of what should be in and out. And we're still getting there. But the climate adaptation piece that you've done for MFE is really important to how we integrate it into our work. So we value your work done there. In terms of our own carbon emissions as an organisation, we have been working really hard within our joint committee to bring along our TAs to do that, and within TAG you've been able to share that. So I think if we can get every organisation that is willing to undergo an accounting of their own carbon footprint, I think that is a good way for organisations to really know what they're doing and what they need to improve on. So, kia ora. Thank you.
Go on. So no further questions. Do I have a move for the motion? The motion being that we receive and note the annual report. So we have gone. Councillor Roadley.
Kia ora, Chair. Probably a bit late to the party now that you've kind of moved on. I was just, kia ora, Desi and Emily, lovely to see you both back in chambers. Just connecting the dots from our papers earlier in the day, looking at the corporate fleet and air travel numbers that were presented, and where is the part at the council table where we discuss our own in-house progress that we're making on our own, the HBRC emissions reduction?
So we did touch on it. That's the ECOS report that we will come through the annual. I think it is a level of service measure in the annual report, and that. So number 9, yes, HBRC corporate emissions reduction, 8, 9, 10, 11. So in paragraph 9, it says that this decreased 70% on the previous year.
Yep, my question is more around that this is backward looking, it's a reflection on how we did. At what point do we look at the forward and go, hey, we could do this or we could do that?
Can I just, Councillor Roddick, Susie here. So what we are doing constantly, certainly in the fleet space, is how can we accommodate climate change, potential emissions reduction through our fleet. What James referred to earlier on in this paper is that we continue to struggle to find the right equipment to meet the need of works group and or some of our staff where there is no electric or other vehicle or machinery to do that. We are trying our best to put in place plans around that, but we are butting up against some challenges in that space, given given some of that heavy machinery that we do need for some of our work. So it's an ongoing battle, but we continue to look at ways in which we, for example, down to even replacing some of the hand sanitizer and the hand soaps that we use and where they come from. So we're constantly looking. It is a challenge.
I bet it is, and certainly anything that uses diesel. So thank you, Susie. We actually, Councillor Curtin and I often convene in the car park as we're parking and notice the quantity of vehicles out there that always seem to be in the shed. Is that just because of the days we're there on council, or are they all normally out?
So vehicles, the vehicles that we have are both an assigned vehicle for those on-site members of staff that require lots of on-site vehicles, compliance, catchment, etc. And we also carry a pool of cars, more for our internal staff. The pooling cars are much more easier to turn into EVs. They could be comms, engagement type, enviro schools type thing, where it's easier to gain those efficiencies. But certainly the cars that we do have, we do track the utilisation of those, and we always look at ways in which we can either repurpose those, pool them better, certainly now, for sure.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. So we can move on to the recommendation. We receive and note the report. Do I have a mover?
You've done that.
We did. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll just take the vote then. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. So, moving on to H-Brick. Welcome, Tom. And what else are we going to get?
And we have Debbie and Jonathan online too.
Yep.
Oh, here he is.
Right. Welcome, and special welcome to Debbie and Jonathan. I think for some of us it's the first time to meet. Kia ora. Leave Tom to kick us off.
Thank you, Chair, and kia ora koutou committee. Look, I'll just give a brief introduction. I'll just point out a couple of things and then sort of try and circle back to the independent directors, and so we can introduce them properly. But just to acknowledge our directors, Neil and Dan here, and he probably won't want me doing it, but just acknowledge Blair over in the corner there. Long-time fan of H-Brick and very important part of the furniture.
Fan club.
The ongoing. I just want to point out a small error in the paper, and if you could just put a line through paragraphs 8.2.1, 8.2.2 and 8.2.3, they're actually, they've just carried over from last quarter's meeting, so they kind of conflict with the next 4 points, so just cover that off. But look, I'll take the paper as read, but just a brief summary from my end is, probably looking back, a solid year performance for H-Brick, a year of big change for H-Brick. I think some very positive outcomes from the investment review, a big piece of work around the managed funds changeover. And I think, taking a group perspective on council's investment assets, is going to glean some, great insights and help form, some good strategies going forward. So, kind of on that last note, we're looking forward to developing a more strategic relationship with this committee, and rather than reporting to you 4 times looking backwards, come and mix it up and spend more time, not saying necessarily in workshop, but in a workshop mode, thinking hard about the future. But so we'll circle back to the paper. If I could just take the opportunity to introduce our 2 independent directors, which I'm assuming over my shoulder. Firstly, don't be deceived by Debbie Birch's youthful looks. She's a very, very experienced practitioner in investment and finance, and also a senior governor in New Zealand, and has sat on and continues to sit on a number of public listed companies. and Jonathan Cameron, who's also a very experienced practitioner of corporate finance and corporate investment, and also sits on a number of boards. So I might just throw to them to briefly introduce themselves, and you can ask them any questions. So Jonathan, do you mind if I put you up first?
Sure, that's fine, Tom. Nice to meet you all. As Tom said, Jonathan Cameron. I've had a career with PwC, EY, and more the advisory space, and then head of corporate development in New Zealand for around 5-6 years when Christopher Luxon was CEO. And prior to COVID, I stepped out into going back to my private consulting and M&A and strategy and investment banking, corporate finance. Embarked on my governance career then. So since then, I've been on a number of boards and still am, from the likes of Dunedin Airport through to Waipa Networks to Tipu Angitu, which is the commercial arm of Lake Taupo Forest Trust. So a large forestry entity, holding entity of around 35,000 hectares of land, to Veterinary Enterprises Group, which has a vet clinic in Havelock North as well, under Vet N. So a range of experience across different boards, and a number of them reflect the investment ethos of them. So the likes of Waipa Networks had a $120 million war chest to go and do some regional investments as a result of its sale of its ultra-fast fibre network. Tipu Angitu was looking to diversify outside of its forestry assets, and very similar to what we've got here, we're looking to do more and help the investments to propel economic development, and even the likes of relooking at what we've got and what we can reticulate into different things that can really drive the economic outcomes for the region. So really looking forward to what we have in front of us and how we best optimise the investments that we've got to do better for the region.
Thanks, Jonathan. Debbie?
Kia ora koutou. Lovely to be here meeting you all, even though it is online. Apologies for not being there in person. It's so much better when you can meet people face to face. However, I'll just briefly talk about myself. Like Jonathan, I've had a lot of experience in governance, sitting across the Crown and local government sectors, also Māori iwi, and really I'm looking forward to getting to work properly on how we can grow the wealth of HBRIC, working alongside you, and as Tom alluded to, looking more forward-looking. What can we do with our assets to optimise them? So I think, as Jonathan said, that's really we're moving towards that point once we're a little bit more organised. So yeah, lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. And look, we're very remiss of me before not to say welcome back to Dan. Sterling long-term service. Anything you wanted to add, Dan? Or?
No, just I think we're very fortunate to have Jonathan and Debbie on board. They've got huge experience in the managed fund side and governance generally. And some of you may know or not know that Debbie's recently been appointed onto the Westpac board. So we've got some, and there's a lot of experience and Grant on the board at an independent level now. So we're very lucky.
Thank you. So I take it as the big picture here, and as Tom and I had discussed prior to this, we're at a kind of a reset. I mean, with various resets we're going through with HBRIC, the one for today is to go from constantly looking backwards and doing that 4 times a year through this committee to doing less of that, to doing half of that and do half the more prospective stuff. So that's probably the big message that I'd take out of today's papers. Before we do too much of the prospective stuff, I think the board's saying that they've got a little bit more work to do to understand some of the wrinkles around the assets, like the Napier leasehold is one example where things are quite complicated. But anyway, open for questions.
Kia ora, Chair.
Kia ora,
Thank you.
Councillor Ormsby.
And lovely to have you both on screen. It's Hiniwai here. And congratulations to you, Debbie, for representing us on the Napier Port. Thank you for offering yourself for that position, and I know you had to leave another position to take up the Napier Port directorship, so thank you very much. I guess this is a question to the whole team. You embarked on a strategic planning sort of journey the last quarter or even the quarter before that, and Debbie alluded to organising yourselves to get the best benefit from our investments. And looking forward, at what stage are you able to come back to us to talk about what that looks like so that we can talk about that further together, and I guess be in the know of what our forward direction is?
Yeah, so we are moving forward. We obviously prioritise the managed funds RFP and working. You know, I'm really grateful to the HBRC finance team. You know, they've been incredibly busy in the last wee while, and some of the questions we're kind of asking around, those assets and things like that, they're kind of coming at it from a different angle, and I got a really productive session today, just getting more and more information. So I think we are getting a clearer picture of that. We've got an HBRIC board meeting towards the end of this month, and I suppose part of what we've talked about in the paper is just getting our sequencing right. So I want to really get in front of, have that discussion with the HBRIC board, and then hopefully in the following corporate strategic meeting, then be in a position to come in, and kind of advance that conversation.
Great.
So we're getting much closer.
Councillor Sears.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Jonathan. Sophie Sears here. It's following up really exactly from Hiniwai's point. I mean, you'll be acutely aware of the situation we're in terms of post-cyclone. You understand that our flood reviews have just come in looking to the future, which is probably going to be a decade or two of planning and implementation. A community that's, under huge pressure and making it really clear that the rate situation is not something they can cope with. We're in it's an explosive time, really, and the HBRIC war chest, as people call it, although I tell them it's not, is I think the one thing that gives us confidence that we could probably as an organisation be able to get our way through this and do a good job and still be standing probably in 100 years. And I think for me it feels very confused. We've brought you two on and, clever us, that's what I say. How amazing that you're here at this time, and we've given you a really clear direction around the strategy of keeping separate from us. We had workshops, we were really clear that HBRIC did its job and it fed back to us this dividend. Now we're talking about coming together and looking forward, and it seems to me that we're going to need actually something quite different, because if we're going to have to really start having, intergenerational conversations about spending or using some of that money, probably what we've just asked you to do and the strategy we've just put in place is something we're probably going to have to unpack again. So I suppose I just wanted to put on the table the other thing that really I think is a huge problem for us. There are elections and it's only just over a year from now, and while we've now again set up the directorship placements so that we don't lose everyone all at once, so we're at least doing some succession planning, you could lose all the councillors around this table and find that you're in a position where everything's back up in the air. So I just think that we need to quite quickly move fast into really looking at how we're going to work into the future. So I can see what we're talking about here. Let's look a little bit more forward. I'm interested if you've talked really at that kind of quite radical level about what we're going to be able to do in the next 6 months together.
I'll just offer an initial response and let the directors come in, but we're quite specifically focused on that exact need, and we understand that that the shareholder is under a lot of scrutiny, under a lot of pressure, and it's a conversation we've openly had about how can we use this kind of pivot to sort of this workshop and looking forward as a way to sort of make sure that that you have the best information, and the best information is in front of the community going into next year's election. So it's important to have those conversations, you know, well prior to the election and not afterwards or anything like that. So we are conscious of that need, and we're also conscious of the fact that, you know, as a shareholder, the shareholders' needs, you know, can change, or that, you know, there are political decisions and investment decisions, and they're different things. And so, you know, that's just the reality in which we operate. But yeah, we are proactively discussing that need that you pointed to.
Yeah, one of the topics we are working through is structure. So at the moment we've been tasked, you know, we've always reported on our own investments, and we've got a strategy around that, but we're now advising on the council's investment assets, so we've got to get the reporting in a good state around that, and a lot of the costs on the council investment side are a little bit harder to capture. You know, they're hidden within the organisation, so we're working through all that. Tom's working through that, but also we're keen to come back to you with some possible structures, sort of more enduring structures where the two entities can work, you know, more formally together. Say much more than that, but some of, you know, it's
We're thinking the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's reassuring. Thank you.
And we're also very lucky through the RFP process, and through our independent directors. You know, we have an access to, you know, quite a network of, you know, of experts, and we hope to, you know, and to bring them in front of you. You know, so you won't just be hearing from us, but, you know, genuine industry leaders. You know, and so that's you know, and people who are, you know, great, you know, in the commercial investment world, but also, you know, helpful in terms of relationships with, you know, types of organisation that HBRC is.
Thank you. I think I've got Councillor McIntosh and then Councillor Curtin.
Yes, look, I just wanted to note that you guys really are the light at the end of the tunnel for us. We get smacked all over the place because of rate increases and that sort of thing. And if we've got a tool to mitigate that, it's you. And, you know, to give context to that, every time we sell stuff from HBRIC, actually the commensurate rate increase that results from that is locked in forever. So, you know, we need to be very mindful of that. So actually that's a statement, not a question. My question was, insofar as the change to investment strategy is concerned, and our more aggressive approach to managed funds, which, you know, I really strongly endorse, but we need to understand too, don't we, that with that comes greater volatility. So there's going to be times when you're presenting to us and the thing's gone south a bit, and it's going to be easy for us to say, what the hell's going on? Actually, that's just a normal part of that investment. In fact, we shouldn't expect that, albeit we want it to be better longer term, but that's, so we're going to have meetings where you're saying, look, the thing went down 4% last 6 months, and we need to understand that actually that's normal.
Yes, that's exactly right. Debbie, you might like to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have to take a long-term view. We can't be frightened by markets that are going through a down cycle. I mean, how often do we see that? I mean, we're in the middle of a recession at the moment, but the market's quite strong, which is interesting. But my view is that we need to get the strategic asset allocation where everyone is happy, because that's ultimately going to determine our returns. So what I mean by that is, you know, you've already approved a 70-30 split between, you know, equities and bonds in terms of managed funds, but we need to look more broadly at everything else as well, to get an overall risk profile and see if we can make some tweaks here and there, or if we can potentially look at other asset allocations that might just fit the particular needs of the council at this time, because, you know, I think we all recognise the need for a dividend and a bigger dividend than perhaps we can deliver at the moment. So all those factors will be taken into account, but we've yet to sort of sit down and work through that properly yet. So Jonathan, you might have something to add to that.
I was just going to expand, Debbie, on in terms of, as you said, looking within asset classes and drilling deeper. For example, equities will traditionally give you, some of the higher return, but does come with some of the volatility. So looking at some of the alternative or private equity type options as well, that does have a little bit less volatility, but still good return. So it's kind of how do you compartmentalize that, the growth aspect of the portfolio versus the liquid funds and the defensive kind of area. So I concur with Debbie around that as well.
Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment how fortunate we are to have the depth of wealth that is represented by all of our independents, Jonathan, Debbie and Dan. If you add up the directorships, etc., it's an extraordinary level of wisdom that comes around the table. I also would comment, given that we are wanting both to examine where we've come from to date, but also looking forward, and thank Tom for the paper, because the paper itself is probably the most comprehensive way in which we've sort of aggregated the knowledge of the investment. So, and just in that regard, we've got a table at paragraph 10, which identifies essentially the HBRIC HBRC split, and just the realities of that, the straitjacket, in fact, which HBRIC has operated on for quite some time. We need to, if you like, appreciate and understand that. And then the paper in itself, highlighting the review, if you like, the new mandate for HBRIC, but then, and even I think the independent directors have been somewhat surprised by, if you like, the constraints on the portfolio that actually apply. It's not as easy as you think to pick up the portfolio and run with it. It's just, you can't do it in its current state. So this paper, if you like, identifies the issues under each of the investment classes and gives, and I think this is really important from a shareholder's perspective to understand our own portfolio. And I don't think around this table, in my time here, we haven't really understood the assets we've got. And we're now finally unravelling that and able to do something with it. I would urge, though, a good deal of patience from the shareholder because when you read through the paper, you will gain a strong sense of how difficult it is to unravel and realise benefits from it. But I think we've made a really good start with the consolidation of the investment portfolio. That's certainly giving us a bit more flexibility, but also echo the if you like, the work done by the finance team from the HBRC side. Tremendous amount of work diving into here, digging out old documentation and trying to make sense of what's in front of us. So thank you, well done to the team, which Susie leads in that regard. So I don't know if it's a question there, Mr. Chairman, but I commend the paper and
do you agree?
And I ask Tom, does he agree with the assessment I've just made?
Excellent question. Excellent question.
Excellent question and excellent rhetorical question.
Look, I'm happy at this point to move the motion, which is I'm sure, simply to receive the report and thank the staff and the directors. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Williams. Look, this is my sneaky way of just sowing a seed, and I'm particularly taken by and as an ex-banker myself, the financial credentials of both of our two new directors, and I just wanted to pose a question.
One who's just had to jump on a
One
plane,
is,
sorry.
yep, right. Pose the question. So one of the key potential ways of unlocking the constraints around our portfolio is leverage. If we look at borrowing, then we potentially have a lot more flexibility in our asset allocation in future, particularly if we see our existing assets as being essentially strategic, locked in, or for other reasons not liquid. So I just wanted to, and that's one area, so the leverage is one area that hasn't been addressed so far and isn't addressed in the paper, so I just wanted to just put that out there and possibly to ask that we could hear about that in future, as where the directors stand on that. Thank you. Do you want to add anything, Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I do actually, and I was resisting asking a question because I wanted to make a whole bunch of comments. And now I think I'll make my comments that aren't questions. But it really is the culture, and it is everything that everyone said. And I want to, there's two key words. One is licence, the other is apology. I'll start with licence. I'd like to assure that from our perspective, or at least from mine, and I'm pretty sure it's shared, we're giving you guys licence to be bold, even a licence to fail, actually, because we want you to succeed. But unless you're empowered to take risks, make the decisions, the courageous decisions that you wish to take, and to make recommendations to us, which may even be quite radical. We're not going to get there in that intergenerational perspective. If you were to be given $500 million, you wouldn't go and buy half a port, some forests, some properties in Wellington, and a bunch of leasehold properties in Napier. Those are all artefacts of history. And I think that's really what Councillor Curtin and Zam were touching on before. So we really just need to have the best advice about ensuring that when the rainy day truly does come, the war chest is there. In the meantime, we are decreasing the reliance on rates progressively over time. The final point on licence is that I tested Tom last time about the word consistently grow the return, and whether we didn't really need to take, some years you might be saying, sorry guys, we really need to get that long-term thing here. The dividend isn't what you really wanted this year. And Tom pointed out it's a 5-year rolling average, which kind of sort of appeased me somewhat. That leads me to so fill your boots as far as I'm concerned. I didn't even really want to ask questions because I want you to do and tell and recommend. I'm not the expert. The apology is that we did the exact opposite of everything we set you up to do this year in putting an extra dividend expectation. Please pass that on to Debbie, but I can't think of a more perfect storm that could have conspired against us than the combination of a 1,000-year cyclone, a 20-year rates review, an extreme set of financial pressures across local government and indeed the economy, all coming together and coalescing around an absolutely enraged, disappointed and upset community about what they were going to be facing with in terms of rates affordability. And hence, that's what we did. I really do trust, hope, and even promise that that was a one-off. And thank you for your comments about that in the paper. So that's really what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any further
licence to do so?
Thank you. All right. So with that, put the motion. All those in favour?
No. Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Now onto the easy stuff.
So, just got a few minutes left in the day, 20 minutes for the RRA, and welcome Ross McLeod and Blair O'Keefe coming in. Sat patiently as the chair of the port in the back there while we talk about our investments. So, Ross, comprehensive paper. Thank you very much for that. A lot in there, a lot of activity that the RRA's been deeply involved in. So we don't really, we'll take that as read. But look, both of you welcome to just tell us what you want to tell us right now, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Sure. Well, kia ora koutou, and thank you very much for having us here today. Just before we respond, just a couple of things, I guess, to note and acknowledge. Just want to note the scale and complexity of the challenges that regional councils embraced on the back of the cyclone event, not to be underestimated, and also, I guess, acknowledge the work that's going on to respond to that and do so in a way that delivers good outcomes in a timely manner. So again, not an easy task. You will see in the report that there's been a lot of progress since the cyclone. I think we've come a long, long way, and I guess the headlines coming out of that, before I hand over to Ross for some additional comments, are that we've been pretty successful in securing quite a significant amount of funds from the government to support that recovery. That hasn't come by accident or benevolence. It's come through a lot of hard work across the region from a whole range of players, including your own entity, other councils, iwi, and our teams had the privilege of playing a role in trying to coordinate some of that interface with the government. And to date, I think that's gone reasonably well. There's always more money needed, and there's always more work to do, and we're far from where we need to be in terms of fully funded recovery. But I think so far, some good progress has been made, as you'll see in the report. And you will see in the report that the recovery agencies ended up covering quite a number of areas. Some of those are not, black and white recovery areas. They've sort of emerged out of the role of the recovery agency playing an integrator, a coordinator, an interface with government role, and wanting to make sure that opportunity is taken to make sure that there's strategic discussions at a regional level occurring, that there's a strategic and quality interface with the government that results in great outcomes. So we've kind of ended up in a role doing a lot of recovery work, but also playing an interface role for other strategic issues across the region. And from our perspective, that's not us leading or owning that role, it's just playing a role as part of the wider group of councils and iwi across the region. So I just wanted to touch on that on the way in, and I'll hand over to Ross for some further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kia ora tātou, good afternoon. Really, I do want to take the report as read, but just touch on probably 2 or 3 highlights that I think just reflecting on where we're working quite closely with the Regional Council and some of the effort that's gone on there. Probably one of the big non-financial achievements has been the Order in Council for regulatory relief for the flood protection works. We've had a really close working relationship with the Regional Council team, and managed to work with officials to get that through the legislative process and get that signed off. That will bring benefits and give certainty to that program, which was just recognising the good work that was done there. Obviously, key area of focus for us is in transport infrastructure, both advocating for outcomes on in terms of state highways and things, but also local road recovery funding. And obviously the mayors and the chair have played a role in sort of spearheading some of that work, but just really want to acknowledge the work of Councillor Williams as chair of the Regional Transport Committee, and particularly Bryce Cullen as well as the officer supporting that committee. Absolute integration between those recovery programs and the Regional Land Transport Plan. So just wanted to acknowledge that work there. And just a recent highlight is, again, working closely together across the councils, the extra funding from the Capability Fund to speed up the delivery of, in the Regional Council's case, the flood protection works, but also a lot of those other NIWI funded transport projects. Again, good working together, and that really does speak to the sort of the strength of the collaboration and the benefits that can play in dealing in a coordinated fashion with government and its agencies and other parties. So I'll just leave it there with those highlights, Mr. Chairman, and very happy to answer questions.
Thanks both of you. And what is overwhelmingly obvious is the success that the full court press, if you like, of the region being united and really, really joined up in dealing with Wellington, that, you know, as you said, Blair, these things don't happen by accident. It was only through, you know, that work, that cooperation that we've, you know, managed to get as much support from Wellington as we have. Tribute to everybody involved. So, open for questions. Yeah, Councillor McIntosh.
Hey, so look, fantastic work funding wise, massively important. I had a question in respect to that. So the region's got a decent lump of funding now for the work that needs to happen now or over the next 5 years. Over the next little while, so this council is going to be looking at longer term flood resilience, and with that comes another price tag. And I don't know, have any of those discussions been held yet, and if so, where's that at, in terms of creating the expectation of what we might need?
I don't think we've advanced those discussions with government as yet, at least not in a significant way. I think we're probably waiting to engage. We've had preliminary engagement with your team on, you know, what those scheme reviews mean and what that shapes up going forward, and what the case for assistance is, because again, we're finding it, you know, there will be a different set of investment drivers and a case to be made around resilience building as opposed to recovery and restoration. So that is, you know, I think discussions still to be had as the scheme reviews take shape, and then we see what the context is for and the rationale for a case in that space.
Yes, I suppose I'm probably really meaning they're aware that that's a conversation that's going to occur at some point. We don't have any numbers to put around it at the moment, but.
Yeah, look, I think from our perspective, we've navigated out of the immediate sort of response phase. We've moved into the initial recovery phase. The funding has sort of got us through to today's level and a little bit beyond, particularly for the likes of floodwater protection. There's some allocated funding for the next few years to get the sort of ground zero projects up and running. One of the things that as a board and our exec team we've been focusing on is the need for the region to constantly have that bigger strategic plan and priorities and funding model. And I think everyone we talk to sees that as a necessary element, and it's probably an evolution, a positive evolution to get into the space of having those bigger strategic discussions as a region on a united front. And we will have seen recently that the current government has a view around regional deals, and things like this fit into that sort of wheelhouse for making sure that we have a really strong strategic plan for the region around what matters most and what's going to, you know, really make things work. So there's certainly a pathway for those discussions, but it's early days.
Yeah, I think I've got Councillor Sears, Curtin, and then Ormsby.
Kia ora, thanks. Through you, Chair. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Nice to see both of you, and for the version 2 report of the Regional Recovery Plan. I thought it was really excellent and so easy to read, gave you a great overview. Just picking up on this, the future that's coming, we kind of built this, this organisation, the board, the executive, the Matariki sort of coming in as the lead player alongside you, all at that time of massive crisis. So I suppose I'm interested if you still think that the model is right, the way we're set up with the board and Ross, the way staff are working with you, and if we are still open and keeping flexible as the future comes and these next steps, being able to kind of adapt to what we might need if we need to.
A really, really good question, and it's we had this discussion at the Matariki Group last week, and we had it at the meeting prior to that. So I guess a couple of headlines. If you look purely through the lens of the RRA, we are funded until the middle of next year at this stage, government funded. And at this stage, we're seeing if there's any capacity to just give a little bit more longevity to that if required. Ultimately, we're a creation of the Matariki Group, of which your council's a key member. And we look to that group for guidance on what future, if any, there is for our agency, beyond that sort of June-ish kind of period. Our view is that there is definitely space for a critical coordination and unification role and connection to government in whatever formula is designed going forward. That may or may not be an evolution of what we are or something completely different, and we don't have a fixed view. We're not here to create jobs or activity for ourselves. We're here as long as we're needed. We're here to provide advice and guidance. We're here to shine a light on issues and gaps, and ultimately we'll do that until someone tells us we're not required anymore. But I definitely think there's a role for something in that space, because we have been successful as a region uniting and getting together and being coherent, and the current government and the previous government have told us they really value that singularity of purpose and connection into the region. My view would be that's not going to change. They like it. That's why they're talking regional deals, and we've just got to find the formula that's right for Hawke's Bay to make that work. And there's no fixed answer for what that looks like at this stage. But we're certainly happy to chip in with some views on how that can work. I think one of the real strengths that's come out of the last wee while is we've got a whole range of entities all doing what they already did with a heavier load, and we've created a small, quite effective team that can be bolted onto the sides of that just to supercharge it and get things going and moving and picking up some slack and widening the lens a little bit from time to time. We're not a decision maker. We're not the owner of anything. We're not responsible for the delivery of things. But I personally think there's been some real value added to the region by having a small, nimble team able to just sort of keep things flowing and moving and funding and activity, moving forward.
Councillor Curtin's. Sorry, Councillor Curtin's going to keep his powder dry for a bit, so Councillor Ormsby.
Thanks through you, Chair, and kia ora koroa. Welcome back, and it's I definitely support the value added that the RRA brings to our collective front, particularly to the government. So you talked about regional and city deals, and what is expected from the government from a regional perspective. We know 5 regions have already gone out. And they are the highly populated and sort of growth areas, particularly with infrastructure. We know we had a briefing to incoming ministers that set our regional priorities. So I guess the question is, with all those pieces of work that we've done or we're going to do, where do you see the value of RRA on behalf of the region in terms of getting work done that we've already got funding for, had negotiations with the government for us, the NIWI work particularly, versus we're looking forward to want to do deals with the government, given their priority and criteria around regional deals?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a really good question. So we know from discussions with the government that the advice was for Hawke's Bay to focus on the recovery first, so not to worry about being in that first wave of that regional deal sort of framework, but to be ready and to be thinking about how we do want to engage in that. So I think we need to keep on and focus on the delivery exactly as you've highlighted there, Councillor Ormsby, the delivery of what we've asked for and been funded to do so far, and the delivery of the things we hope to be funded for in the next step. But it doesn't change, that recovery component is absolutely essential to getting us back to par and hopefully beyond, as the capability of the region and the economy and workforce to move forward. The regional deal framework is important. The government's quite clearly signalled that their priorities for that are around growth and productivity enhancement and workforce development. And and we obviously as a region have goals around that. So the things that were in the BIM and the work that we're doing at the moment is both just updating the briefing following some discussions with the Glasgow sort of region and looking at work that's happened there in a regional deal sense, but also starting to flesh out a framework of what the key components of our regional deal for Hawke's Bay might be. Obviously, infrastructure will be a part of that. Quite likely, water security will be a part of that. Quite likely, there'll be elements around sort of spatial planning and coordination, and housing will also be a key part of that. So we sort of know that will probably have some things added to it, but we know what the broad frame is. We know where we're likely to be, shaping that, and we're developing that work for discussion between the councils. The regional deal framework is primarily between central and local government, but with a clear capacity and certainly within our context for business and mana whenua to come into that framework. So we're doing that work and we'll present it to the councils and to the wider Matariki group to sort of look at, pull apart, put together and see how we want to go forward. And we're also engaging, with Wellington and officials just on where we should be placing ourselves in the framework, given that previous advice around recovery.
Yes, just to build on that, closing out stuff we know needs to be closed out as our top priority. There's some monitoring that we're accountable for to the government for ensuring some of that funding goes into the right places and delivers what it was supposed to. That's the bulk of our focus, but there's probably 2/3, give or take, and then the other third is very much on the looking forward and what role can we play for as long as we're here to help give the region a leg up with the transition out of the recovery into whatever a regional deal and or our own version of the future looks like as a region. So I don't know if it's a fair allocation, but it's something like that.
Okay, Councillor Williams in a minute, but I'm just going to pop in a sneaky question of my own, and it's really following on from what you were saying, Blair, and that other stuff that you might be looking at. Point 33 of the paper talks about telecommunications resilience review, and that was interesting, and particularly from a post-cyclone point of view, that was, this is major infrastructure, and infrastructure resilience is important. I wanted to ask whether there's been any thought either through yourselves or perhaps in conjunction with READER about doing the same thing for our power system, our electric power system.
Yeah.
And a very selfish climate joint action committee basis on which this, because in future we need a two-way power system, not a one-way grid.
So I think we have been engaging reasonably extensively with the electricity sector, Unison and Transpower, primarily though around resilience and recovery planning, rather than, we know they are talking about their plans to decarbonise and make the grid more flexible. Our immediate focus has been around that. We haven't entered into a sort of independent review of that sector because the engagement with the sector was immediate and responsive. So Transpower are looking at their resilience rebuild plans and are engaging with the public on that now. Unison are involved in those discussions and a good conduit with us. So those discussions are a key part of infrastructure recovery, but we haven't gone down that review path for them.
Okay, I'll have to bail Lucy Leighton up. Thank you.
I will add a comment. We know we need a regional strategy and plan for the supply of water, the management of water. That's sort of on the grid. We know we need it for telecommunications. We know we need it for transport. We should have it for energy as well. And these are the sorts of things that are strategic level as a region when we're looking at prosperity, resilience, etc. We need to develop regional strategies for, and energy is a critical lifeline and productivity asset that the region should have a really coherent strategy for, would be my view. At this stage, it doesn't sit in the top priorities for things that need to be worked on, but as the as the region embraces what comes next, energy has to feature.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Look, comment in the question, the comment, I don't know whether you guys, the best evidence we could muster as a region as to the case for amalgamation, or in fact proof that with collaboration between the existing entities it's not required. Thank you for your acknowledgement, Ross. What I wanted to reflect in that context, in all seriousness, is that you have been extraordinary in the way that you have distilled and discerned the different voices of staff across our organisations and you know, put that together and reflected it to Wellington. And I saw that two examples. One was when we met the Prime Minister and Minister Brown just before Christmas, and again when you met the Transport Minister earlier this year. 5 very clear priorities. They knew exactly what we were about, what our priorities were, and I could see and hear our voices in it. And I think that's been an astounding success in terms of that regional pitch and speaking with one voice, which is, I think, that is just a litany of success that you've portrayed, and I think it's a reflection of that. So congratulations on that. Now the question. There was some good news recently on the Waikari Gorge. Ross, do you want to just sort of share where your understanding is of that in terms of announcements yesterday?
Yes, Cindy, thank you. It sometimes feels like you're only as good as your last performance, but you know, so far we've had some good results. But yes, we think positive news on the Waikari Gorge. Initially, when the budget was announced, there was no additional Crown funding for what I call resilience and improvement projects on the state highway network associated with the recovery. It was all about restoration, and the message was projects like Waikari would be competing in the broader RONS and National Land Transport Fund framework. What's happened since there? Due to some joined up lobbying and it being number one priority in the transport plan, the minister's taken an interest in that project, and now in this NLTP 3-year period, there's funding for consenting design and property acquisition for the project, with a signal that construction funding will occur in the 23 to 30 NLTP program. So that's a step forward. It's a commitment to the project. We're not there yet. It's subject to some things, but it's a big step forward for where we were, because what was intended was to replace the Bailey Bridge online and with a bridge that would be modern design, more durable, but still in that hazard zone. And that's now been looked at, and the councils, you know, all signalled this. The minister asked the mayors, and they all said, leave the Bailey Bridge there. We're happy with that if it means we get the full realignment, and that's been taken up by the minister and the board of NZTA and signalled the direction of full realignment. So that we're quite pleased with that. I know some members of our regional fraternity would prefer it happen faster, but we'll take that as a win. We're on the path to getting it done. Thank you.
Councillor Curtin, would you like to move the paper, or you got a question?
I've got a bit of a question.
Fire away. Fire away. We'll try and get wrapped up in the next 5 minutes.
Look, probably Blair might be. We had a prior conversation, Blair, around this. Just looking at the work program that's identified in the paper, it traverses a huge range of topics, very significantly intersecting with the regional council's own work program. You know, transport. We've got a transport committee which is meant to be collaborative across the board and pulling that together in a regional transport plan. We've got, you know, we're essentially the workhorse for the flood protection work. Silt and debris is intimately involved. The project management office, I mentioned transport, telecom resilience review. I'm reflecting on our capacity in lifelines where we've dedicated an enormous resource to just that. I see you're in housing, we don't do that, but we do water security, and I see you're in there as well. So the point is this, it's a crowded space at the moment in terms of relationship with government. We've got 5 councils, mayors, etc., all interacting with the politicians from Wellington. We've got Matariki, we've got Rita, we've got RRA, we've even got a Crown Manager. So our intersection with central government is pretty intense. My question is, are we now, as local democracy and particularly regional council democracy, redundant? And we need to rethink our role in, if you like, interfacing with government and those functions that you've just identified in this paper, or are identified in this paper.
I'll just clarify are you saying is the RRA redundant, or are you saying is the regional council?
What's your view, post-June?
I might just intervene and just point out that in the chair's view, that's a question. It's a political question. You don't have to answer that. If you want to provide me, that's fine. But
certainly won't make any comment on the future role of the regional council. You've obviously got critical mandate to deliver on, and I guess what I would say in response to your comments is that, and I think I said earlier, we're here as long as we're needed. Whether we are the vehicle for what's needed going forward remains a question mark. Whether the region needs some additional highly skilled mobile resources to just keep all the things going that need to be done, I believe so. But it only works when people want it there, and we're here as long as that's requested and wanted. And the minute it's not, then we move on to other things, or we move out of the picture altogether. And that's the way that our agency looks at our role. And it's certainly not our role to opine on the significance, importance, or future role of anyone in local government or any other entity, other than our focus is on outcomes, and we're desperate to find a way to support great outcomes in the region.
Fantastic question. Possibly the wrong forum, but a really great question.
Come on. I'd probably just add one thing to that.
Sure.
is just that we're certainly not trying to be another voice within that range of voices you covered there or outlined, Councillor Curtin. We're certainly trying to coordinate those voices and amplify them in the right and direct them in the right space. We've clearly see we have a role in coordinating across those different parties and presenting a unified voice to government where that's appropriate. And we're involved in areas where the Matariki Governance Group has asked us to pick up those things, sometimes with a straight recovery focus, often with a focus that's starting to get into future resilience, whether it's in the housing space or where we were asked to sort of develop a vision sort of paper combining across the region the different aspects around water security and potential resilience in the future. So we will respond to what we're asked to do, and we will not try to be an additional voice, but be a coordinating channel, really.
Thank you for that. Look, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the paper.
Happy to move. Chair?
Councillor Sears to move, and yeah, well done, Jock. I think you just seconded that one. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you both very much. We ran slightly over time,
A minute.
but I think it was quality, and I deeply appreciate the chance to talk about regional recovery in that context. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
So, if we could just, Charlie, maybe you can lead us in a closing karakia, please.
Very good. Yeah, kura tata. We all know the words. Let's carry on. Kia tata katoa, te atawhai tō tātou ariki, a iu karati, me te ara atua, me te whiwhinga teitanga ki te wairua tātou, ake aki, amen.
Kia ora.